clever part. The
You see, after I tumbled through a multiversal portal inside a cow's stomach, I wound up in a world where apes and monkeys evolved to be the dominant species. No, it's not future Earth. I checked. Donkey Kong Bonanza just came out here last year.
Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Steve from off of Rare Gamer.
Hi, Steve. Here we are again, stuck in this perpetual cycle of having
It'll never end, Hyle.
This might be the end, and I know I said that last time. I know,
and the time before.
I know I was quite adamant for a couple times now that this was the end of the story, because what more could we learn? But yet here we are once more discussing Stop N Swop on the Kongversation. And this isn't a new news story. This has been out in the public consciousness for like 3.5 months now, but unfortunately it dropped right before we went on our seasonal hiatus. And so it was one of those things where, all right, well, one of the first episodes when we're back for our 2026 season is discussing this. For those who aren't aware, what I'm talking about is in November of last year, the recently retired from Rare Gregg Mayles teased on social media, among other things related to Banjo-Tooie's then 25th anniversary, was that he had the original Banjo-Tooie document for Stop N Swop still in his possession. And this came about because of you, Steve, you prodding him on social media.
Yeah, so he ended up posting some Banjo-Tooie stuff, and I'm like, this is amazing. We're getting all these different worlds, and I have actually got a whole breakdown of like the little changes, all the connections to like Cauldron Keep when it was a level or like in there. So there's a lot of interesting things to kind of sort through there. But I was like, you know what? I said last episode that Gregg Mayles probably has a design document for Stop N Swop. And while he's posting all of these intriguing Banjo-Tooie world maps, maybe I'll just kind of ask him about that. So I asked him, any chance for a peek at some Stop N Swop design docs for Tooie? Just kind of throwing it out there. And amazingly, he comes back and goes, maybe. And he posts a very rare style tease. It was just an opening paragraph that he posted on his Twitter about 15 minutes later, and I went absolutely nuts over that. I'm like, this changes everything.
So I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I think you then immediately DM'd me on Blue Sky about it.
Yeah, I did. Yes. And I think at the time you were saying it's not enough.
Yeah,
it's stuff we already know.
At the time, I was being my grumpy, still burned out on doing all those episodes on Donkey Kong Bonanza in a row self. And I was like, the last thing I need right now is the obligation to do a Stop N Swop episode based on a few sentences from an old document from a quarter century ago. But
a conversation mini.
maybe a conversation mini. But yeah, so then 3 days before Christmas, when I'm already frazzled on top of everything else, the holiday stress, Gregg then posted a 2-page document titled Banjo-Tooie, Cold Swap version 1, dated to August 27th, 1999. And keep in mind that this is such a bombshell because this was still over a month before Nintendo recognized the extent of what Rare was up to, because it was October 1st, 1999, where they sent a hasty fax to Chris Stamper, or at least addressed to Chris Stamper. They weren't pulling punches here, asking Rare to remove the feature that they detected from Donkey Kong 64, where it was basically sending out a signal saying, hey, any other N64 games? You want a cold swap for me to read the data? And that was the moment that Stop N Swop, all of the grand promises and frenzied plans that Rare had been cooking up for over a year, that was the moment it died. Because they had to then quickly remove what they had intended for Donkey Kong 64 to interact with Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, And so everything after October 1st, 1999 is like, how can we make good on what we promised at the end of Banjo-Kazooie? How can we make up to the fans who've been looking forward to this? And I mean, that continues to this day, Steve. Like
it does, yeah.
The not shame of Stop and Swap, but the utter disappointment of Stop and Swap has reared its head in the XBLA era of Banjo-Kazooie through the release the release of Yooka-Laylee. Now we're talking about it again now that they're putting Banjo-Kazooie games on the Evercade, and they're releasing the Super Pocket Rare Edition this year. So it's just like it's never going to leave us completely, but basically everything before that fax went out from Nintendo, that's what we're interested in, because that is the original scheme. That is the original mad daisy chain that we have been talking about for so many years, not just on the Kongversation, not just on Rare Gamer, not just on DK Vibe, but huddled on our dens, in our bedrooms, on our little beanbag chairs, in the middle of 1998. This has all been such a huge part of our fandoms for so long. So, we've asked so many people from Rare about Stop and Swap. Those who
annoyed is the appropriate word.
Yeah, I mean, like I had Paul Makachek on the Kongversation a couple of years ago, and I was almost apologetic because I was like, I don't really want to have to bring this up because everybody brings this up to you. But it's astounding to me that we have a document like this. And I mean, thank the Lord of Games that Gregg is apparently as much of a pack rat as I am, because this is the kind of stuff that, unless it was kept on file at Rare, would have just been lost to the ages. Yeah. This is the kind of thing that, we've had to rely on the memories of the people who were there. And I mean, it's almost been 30 years now. So there's that factor, but there's also the slight inconvenience that the people who actually concocted this, most of them aren't going to be as passionate on this subject as the fans are, because we probably think about Stop and Swap like sex on average of once every 7 seconds. And so that's going to make it always at the forefront of our minds and bodies in some cases. But if you were actually there and working on it, chances are it wouldn't have been something you would have given much thought about, or at least your original intentions, once you had to scrap and remove everything from both Donkey Kong 64 and your early plans for Banjo-Tooie. So to have a document like this, that is the unvarnished truth as to what they were pulling, what they were intending, that is the greatest holiday gift I got this year.
Same with me too, sadly enough.
I did get an ear cleaner from my parents. It shoots a jet of water up your ear canal to clean out the wax. That's pretty good.
I've been using it wrong.
I was gonna say that's number 2, but I don't want to lean into that bit anymore. So I didn't want to have to do this with you, Steve. I thought we were done, but here we are one more time, maybe for the final time.
I enjoy your company, Hyle.
One more Stop and Swap episode of the Kongversation, where all previous threads finally converge for one final, gonna break out my French here, denouement on the legendary cartridge swapping ambitions of Rare in the late 1990s. But before we get into that, I got to give some due diligence. I've got to plug some stuff. Join the DK Vine forum. It's a very exciting time, Steve. I know you're usually just on the Rare side of things, and you haven't really kept up with Donkey Kong since Diddy Kong Racing DS, probably. But it's a very exciting time for Donkey Kong. And we've just had Donkey Kong Bonanza. We have the monthly Emerald Rush events where they're pulling classic characters and statues that you can win in game. Coming up in just a week or so, we're going to have Wrinkly's Ghost and Tiny Kong as statues. It's very exciting. But we're also going to have the Donkey Kong movie going to be announced probably sometime soon from Illumination, Universal, and Nintendo. And so join the DK Vine forum and you can talk about it. You can argue about who you want cast as the voice of Trough and Scoff in the Donkey Kong movie. DKVine.com/forum. And once again, I just want to plug that the Kongversation's Season 14 artwork is now available in t-shirt form on our merchandise store at dkvine.com/merchandise. You can get it with the Kongversation logo and the little golden microphone, or you can get it without. And then it's just a really nice rendering of the Banandium root by our own Dustin Jackson. So check that out. Of course, DK Vine is on Patreon, dkvine.com/Patreon. It's how we keep this madness going. It's how you support independent Donkey Kong journalism. And in this case, Donkey Kong Universe scholarly review. We are going back through history here, and we are finally definitively saying what Stop and Swap was. So I am always so happy when we do these episodes of The Kongversation because we stream these for our $5 a month and up patrons. And right now we've got Just Andre, we've got Traveler of the Stars, we've got Giga Strike, we have got March Rose, we have got Courtney is here, Alter Mentality, DK Vine staffer Jem has joined us, Porygon Q is here, even though their power is out. That's dedication. Thank you, my friends. And Steve, how's
I'm
life?
here too.
How's life for you? How are things going in your neck of the Click Clock Woods? How are things going with Rare Gamer even?
My neck of the woods, it's scary being America's hat right now. Please stop.
It's scary being America's underwear right now. Like, you're the bowler hat, I am the red Y fronts.
That's fair. Yeah, Rare Gamer's providing a lot of necessary coping right now. Just talking about video games and getting away from the madness of it all is great. So yeah, we're continuing Rare Gamer. We're looking at old games of the past that Rare has made and games they continue to make, like Sea of Thieves, of course.
And,
so yeah, just
Rare Collection 1 for the Evercade.
That is true. Yep.
The Super Pocket Rare Edition coming this June.
Indeed.
Yeah. I gotta ask, because I haven't really had a chance to chat with you since this really became a problem for us. But how have you been holding up with the AI bot scrapers?
Well, let me ask how it's been a problem for you.
It was a terrible problem for us. It was crashing our website constantly. We had to buy into an expensive firewall to keep them out.
So with me dealing with the clankers, as I call it, well, actually, on the topic of Clanker's Cavern, oh, damn, I forget the level that's after Clankers. Bubble
Gloop Swamp!
Oh.
Get out of here!
No, hold on. It's not. It's Bubblegum Breeze is actually what it's called.
Oh, okay. Well,
and what I mean by that is if you ask AI, Meta AI right now to list the levels of Banjo-Kazooie, it will say Bubblegum Breeze. It thinks that that's a level. And the dangerous thing of my experience with AI to segue into that, it's giving misinformation at a crazy amount and people are just buying it up.
Yeah.
If you're an expert on anything, and for us nerds, I'm like, well, obviously it's going to be video game trivia. And as trivial as that is, if it's getting that stuff wrong, think of what other things it's getting wrong on a daily basis. And people are consulting it for like life-altering advice. It's really uncomfortable to think about. So that's my experience of it. Ask AI what the levels in Banjo-Kazooie are, and when the color drains from your face as you go, oh, it's just filling in the gaps with random nonsense like DNA of frogs in Jurassic Park. That's scary as hell. So yeah, that's been my negative experience of it. Yeah, nothing on the website front. We seem to be pretty okay with that.
I mean, to be fair, the first like 45 minutes of Jurassic Park, it's perfectly lovely. They're having a nice time.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, they ride that little cart into the little cloning lab. It's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was just wondering because I've noticed like so many sites, so many colleagues of DK Vine have struggled with this like horrible new era where big tech is basically like forcing so many off the internet because they cannot handle the traffic. All of the bot scrapers are, coming their way to steal your website's info and basically repurpose it for AI. But yeah, thankfully we put
and then make stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, like again, to talk about our patrons, we have a Patreon. We are successful enough on there that we can afford a firewall every year and basically keep them out and keep the website running. But it is a shame. Like I noticed like DKC Atlas, probably our oldest contemporary just on the Donkey Kong side of things, they are constantly down because of it. And it's just, it's heartbreaking to see because, I mean, so much of the beauty of the early internet was just how anybody could create a website. And I know that like, that's also like dangerous, but it's just like it allowed so many people to have a voice. And now it feels like those voices are being choked out amongst all the other horrible things that are resulting from the AI boom. But yeah, just checking in and seeing how Rare Gamer was coping with it.
Struggling like everyone.
In a live stream, Gigastrike says at least ChatGPT will give correct answers when asked what Cranky Kong's relationship to Donkey Kong is. I don't know where you stand on that, but you know what? I'd rather just ChatGPT goes the way of Wrinkly Kong, but then we board up the doors so she can't get out.
You want ChatGPT to be in the Emerald thing that you were talking about before?
I don't want a statue of it. No. I'm just saying, like, if I had to choose one Kong for ChatGPT to emulate, it would be the dead one. No shade meant for Wrinkly. Love her. Great ghost grandma there. All right, Steve. All right. We are discussing Stop and Swap yet again, but every episode of the Kongversation is potentially somebody's first. Now, I don't know why you would start with this, but, you never know. You never know. We have done 4 previous episodes in the Stop and Swap lineage. We did one back in season 8 of the Kongversation, just called Stop and Swap, A History. We did one in season 9 called Stop and Swap, A Revelation. We did one in season 11 called Stop and Swap, A Summation. We did one, that was, season 11. And we did one in season 12 that was Magnification. And that was the one where I said, no more, Steve, no more. But basically, Stop and Swap has been something that fans have long obsessed over since, I mean, even before we knew it was called Stop and Swap. Like, even before we finished Banjo-Kazooie and we saw this swirling key made of ice behind this frozen wall in Waza's Cavern in Freezeezy Peak. We're like, what is that? That's weird. How do we get to that? And from there, it basically created this lifelong passion for both what Rare was up to on the N64, but also for me, just video game mysteries that don't have a clear answer, but clearly are there for some reason, even if just to make fans speculate and hypothesize and just go on internet message boards and speculate wildly. I love that kind of thing, and that's all because Stop and Swap showed me how much fun it can be to have this sort of grand mystery in a game's world that's almost beyond the capacity of what the player can solve, let alone the characters in universe. So really quick, what is the Cliff Notes version, the Cliff Farm version, trying to keep to Banjo-Kazooie worlds, of Stop and Swap, Steve?
Okay, so Stop and Swap was a grand idea that Rare had during Banjo-Kazooie that you could take memory from one game, data from one game, and exchange it with another by cartridge swapping. So by playing the second game, you would have an event go into motion. So you'd see a cutscene of an area you couldn't get into in Banjo-Kazooie, and the cutscene would then end. What you would, as the player would do, you would turn off Banjo-Tooie, you'd take it out, you'd put in Banjo-Kazooie, you'd turn it back on, you'd collect that item, which is now inexplicably unlocked through this kind of magic thing. You would then do the reverse, so you turn off the power and put Banjo-Tooie back in, and by turning it on, you've now made a successful swap. So data has been transferred from one game to another, allowing you to unlock something to collect it, and then transfer it successfully to a second game. So a brilliant idea that unfortunately was torn down a month into its implementation into Donkey Kong 64. So it was this grand plan that Rare had. They wanted to have multiple games set up within their library that would take advantage of this, that you'd exchange items between and collect all these different things. And unfortunately, Nintendo took one look at that and said, "You want to do what?" And then immediately had to stop them in their tracks. So unfortunately, as Rare had promised all these different items within Banjo-Tooie specifically, they then had to do a make good during the development of that game, which confused a lot of people because we were told one thing, it led to another. And then since then, it's been this ongoing mystery of us peeling back the layers to see the truth. And this episode is really exciting because now we have that. We have the ultimate truth of what this entire thing was supposed to be. So that's what's really exciting this time around.
Yes, and of course, for the longest time, Stop and Swap was described as hot swapping. Basically yanking out an N64 cartridge while your power is still on the console and then sliding in another cartridge. But the actual truth behind it is that it's cold swapping. And what is the difference between hot swapping and cold swapping, Steve?
Hot swapping breaks your stuff.
Right, which is what everybody thought. Oh, yeah, Nintendo didn't want them to do this because it would wreck everything. And, Nintendo is afraid of the lawyers. This would be a whole scandal. The truth is, this is much more benign than a lot of people conjured up at the time.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the difference. So hot swapping, you would leave the power on during that whole thing, which if you played the N64 or any cartridge-based media, if you rip out one of the games suddenly, the sound just goes, static, the picture stays on the screen. You would then put in the other game while that's happening, shut off the power, turn it back on. So that's called a power cycle. So you do that, and it would clear and everything there. But the only problem with that is there's as Nintendo put in their notes, there's latch-up conditions, there's a lot of bad stuff that can happen there because the system's not ready to be turned off and you've just yanked things and put it back. It just does not work. Whereas cold swapping, it clears that memory. It allows it to refresh. It doesn't get hung up. It doesn't, have a latch-up condition. You have one game playing, and just like if you were playing one game and wanted to play another, nobody's had an issue on the N64 doing that because that was the whole purpose of that system. You turn the power off, you take one game out, you put it in, you turn it on. That's how it functions, and that's how Paul Makachek wanted it to function,
yes.
And it did function that way. And then, unfortunately, Nintendo did get cold feet, going, players might do this while the power is active, thus hot swapping, and we really don't want to have responsibility for all of these broken consoles on our biggest holiday game of the year in 1999. It's not really on our agenda, so
yeah,
that's unfortunately why they had to step in.
And of course, a lot of people will bring up, why didn't Rare just use the controller pack, the memory pack that you could insert into N64 controllers? Why didn't they use another method? And the fact is, Rare was always looking to push technological boundaries in this era. And so I think the idea just came about because, the N64 retains a little bit of memory for a certain amount of time after you turn off a game. How can we make use of that? Ooh, what fun. It's almost like magic. And so, I completely understand why people are questioning this method when they could have just done it so much more simply. But I think the appeal of Stop and Swap is how it is almost this like brain breaking thing if you do not know how the N64 works. If you don't know the inner mechanics of all of this, it does seem like it's happening through magic. Like the characters are like tossing items from one cartridge to another.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is that, forward thinking. Well, maybe not so much forward thinking because of the issues brought up,
Yeah.
but just that, asking permit or asking for forgiveness rather than permission kind of, isn't this a cool thing that we've discovered? Let's go full force into it and see how we can really make this a truly unforgettable experience. And in that, both in Succession and its failure, they accomplish that, which is really cool. If not for it failing, we wouldn't have this, decades long mystery that we've been following ever since. So it's just a very cool idea in practice. And even in the execution where it was stumbled a bit, we still get this really, really cool thing to look over. So
yes. And I think for me, because keep in mind, Banjo-Kazooie came out a couple of months before Pokemon was released in the West. And so, of course, we had instances in the past of games talking to each other, cartridge-based games talking to each other. You would have Game Link cables on the Game Boy. You would have, the lock-on cartridges of the Genesis. And that was all really cool. That was all just, again, like magic when you're a kid. This isn't just software. This is, an actual portal into another world. And oh my God, now the worlds aren't confined by the pieces of plastic that you hold in your hand. And so I was fascinated. Like, how are they going to do this? How are they going to take these items promised at the end of Banjo-Kazooie and actually drop it into the sequel? But not only that, but getting to go into these walled off areas in the original game as well. I mean, that was part of it. It wasn't just, I'm going to get the ice key in Banjo-Tooie. I'm going to get these 2 question mark eggs in Banjo-Tooie. It was, I'm going to get to go beyond the frozen wall of ice in Waza's Cave in Banjo-Kazooie. I'm going to get to raise Shark Food Island in Treasure Trove Cove and go up that series of jumps that Mumbo shows us at the end. I'm so excited for that. It was like more content in the original game on top of getting to have these items in the sequel. So it's very thrilling, and we didn't even know the half of it at the time because there were loose plans for up to 6 N64 games from Rare to be included in this, as I call it, Stop and Swap daisy chain. Now, the only ones that have ever been confirmed, and at this point in time, I think it's safe to say they never had any other games actually like ready to go for Stop and Swap. When they say 6, that's just based on the development cycle and the possibility. It's not like it was ever like ready to go for Conker to be part of this. Mm-hmm. But the games that are confirmed are Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64, and of course Banjo-Tooie. Now the other candidates for Rare N64 games to make up the purported 6 are Perfect Dark, 12 Tales Conker 64 / Conker's Bad Fur Day, Dinosaur Planet, and I guess Mickey Speedway USA, but probably unlikely not to be included just because of Disney. Now, the one that is more or less deconfirmed, and I say this tentatively because you never know. You never know what we're going to find, Steve. So even though, just because nobody has found any trace of Stop and Swap in the code, I'm still hedging my bets and saying Jet Force Gemini, probably not, but maybe someday we'll find something. The only thing about Jet Force Gemini that makes me say, nah, it was never part of it, was that it was released in October of 1999, right after Nintendo killed the feature in DK64, and Jet Force never came up in the back and forth there, so.
And I'd also argue, too, as a secondary point, with Banjo-Tooie, Donkey Kong 64, and Banjo-Kazooie, you have the same team there ostensibly working on all three games designing-wise, because you would have had George Andreas as well as Gregg Mayles kind of helping DK64 along, as well as Banjo-Tooie and Banjo-Kazooie. So they had that prime team, whereas back in the 90s, I mean, the teams were incredibly isolated, kind of set to their own devices. I'm sure that had this worked and had they been able to carry out this plan and actually have it come to fruition, I'm sure then they would have said, all right, now let's start bringing other teams in the fold and telling them about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as, 1999 October was concerned, it's like, okay, we have, the designer behind Kazooie, both of them working now on DK64. We'll prep it into that. And of course, now looking forward, it's August. So let's get, Banjo-Tooie into the fold now too, to have it, pass off the baton to the next step. And then unfortunately, 1 month after that is where everything went to shit.
Now, of course, Chris Seaver was also working on DK64. According to Chris Seaver, he actually made more money off DK64 than he ever did for Bad Fur Day, because he designed Glower the Tadpole, everybody's favorite animal buddy in Gloomy Galleon. But yeah, like I think it's just basically, if we were ever to know anything about how it would have impacted Conquer or anything else, we would have to go into an alternate timeline, because it never got far enough in our own to actually have any concrete plans there, like a golden acorn or something in Conquer, or I guess if it became Bad Fur Day, then, a golden piece of shit or a dildo or something, which I'm sure that Nintendo wouldn't want part of that.
There'd be no facts over that.
Yeah. So anyway, this document, what we're going to do, Steve, is we're going to go through it line by line. I can do most of the reading, but I want you to chime in, and we're basically going to break down everything in this document, including the typos, which there's one typo in here in particular that threw me. And I spent a long time when I was writing the DK Vine article for this. It took me a long time to parse if this was a typo or not, or if this was some sort of grand revelation. And I came down on the side of it's just a typo. But we'll go through it. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about how this relates to Banjo-Kazooie, to Donkey Kong 64, and to Banjo-Tooie. All right. So the actual document starts off by saying the cold swap, and that's how they refer to this throughout the whole document, the cold swap, as all one word as well. They never refer to it as Stop N Swop, even though that terminology was already established because it was in the code of Banjo-Kazooie. But they call it cold swap here, so that's what we'll call it. The cold swap will allow items in Banjo-Kazooie and DK64 to be activated from Banjo-Tooie. These objects are then retrieved from Banjo-Kazooie and DK64 and taken back to Banjo-Tooie, where they will allow the player access to special features. Now, keep in mind, this document was for Banjo-Tooie, so everything is in relation to the perspective of Banjo-Tooie and the team working on it. So this is also, like, with the point of view that Donkey Kong 64 is already out and Stop N Swop is in there, and Nintendo never had a problem with it. Yeah.
And also, too, just as a fun fact, the explanation that Hyle has just read, that was what Greg teased with.
Yes.
So imagine it's earlier on in the month, you know nothing about this document, and all of a sudden that is on your screen, and you're going, the Ark of the Covenant exists. It's here. He has a document. And then sitting on that for weeks going, oh, when's he going to post it? When's he going to post it? Oh, is this another post about a fax from Nintendo from Miyamoto? I don't care about that. Get that off my screen. I want to know about Stop N Swop, damn it.
Yeah, and, knowing the way that Greg and others from Rare like to tease things for decades on end, I also wasn't really expectant of anything. Like, I thought, okay, yeah, this is all we're going to get, because maybe there's stuff in there that maybe Gregg doesn't want to share, and maybe it's a little bit too sensitive given their relationship with Nintendo, and, you never know. Like, I'm still astounded that Paul Magachek shared that fax back in 2021 from Nintendo, which I quickly saved, by the way, because I was like, if Paul deletes this, I want to have this in our own file. Like, I'm going to back this up on several thumb drives and scatter it across the world in like lock boxes so they can never take this from us. But like I wasn't really expecting Gregg to go this hard with this reveal.
Yeah. Well, there was a second tweet I made because I'm relentless on the Stop and Swap stuff. So there was a few later that I ended up coming in and saying, "Hey, are we gonna see anything more?" And then he did respond and say, like, once everybody's bored with the other stuff, I plan on sharing the full document. And then I'm like, yes, okay. And embarrassingly enough, because it was kind of going world by world, it wasn't in any order, but it's like, here's Click Clock Wood, or not Click Clock Wood, rather. Here's like Jolly Roger's Lagoon, and here's Cloud Cuckoo Land, and here's like this level, that level. I was kind of making my own advent calendar. I just wrote all the level names down on a scrap piece of paper, and every time he updated, I'd scratch it off to be like, we're one step closer, one step closer.
Yeah, I didn't really keep up with too much of it. Of course, I heard it by proxy because, of the world I inhabit and what I do for a living. So, but it's really cool stuff. But yeah, like I want to get to the fireworks factory, as it were. I want to get to
sure.
The key and the eggs and everything therein. So, and of course the gold DK bust, which we'll discuss.
Yes.
Yeah, so then they say models graphics needed. In order to do this, certain scenes and graphics from Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64 will have to be recreated or duplicated and included in Banjo-Tooie. They are as follows. From Banjo-Kazooie, a recreation of the scene showing Shark Food Island rising up out of the sea and Treasure Trove Cove. And these are all a recreation of the scene, so I'm not going to read that part. And then it says, the tomb door opening in Gobi's Valley. The secret egg appearing in Mad Monster Mansion's bathroom. That's the one on top of Lago, for those who aren't aware. The blocked barrel clearing in Mad Monster Mansion's cellar. The secret egg appearing on the captain's bed in Rusty Bucket Bay. The secret egg appearing on Nabnut's table in Click Clock Wood. And then it says the 3 different colored secret eggs as seen in scenes 3, 5, and 6, which I'm not sure why they listed separately. Oh,
it's because the other one, the other secrets are ones that it's just the locations. So if you're seeing Shark Food Island raise out of the sea, you're not seeing the pink egg. You're just seeing it rise up.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. I get it. I get it now.
So 3, 5, and 6, that's the green egg, the red egg, and the yellow egg. So those are the ones that just kind of appear in those locations. Like with the cyan egg, it's got its own thing, like with the barrel. So you don't need to see it. But that's why they separated them that way.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I have to say, though, it is surprising to me how tossed off some of the eggs feel in Banjo-Kazooie. And I know, like, this is kind of beside the point that we're getting at with this episode, and maybe now is not the time to bring up this decades-old gripe, but, like, seriously, you're just dropping an egg on top of Lago? Like, it feels so deflating when you compare it to the majesty of the tomb in Gobi's Valley or Shark Food Island in Treasure Trove Cove, and then it's just like, oh, here's another one. Whatever. And it's just, I don't know. It always felt to me like, the cellar in Mad Monster Mansion, that felt like a big one because it was its own room, its own chamber. And even when playing Banjo-Kazooie, it was like, is there something behind this? Is there something there? Especially once we learned about the other eggs, the other 2 eggs that Mumbo showed at the end of the game. It was like, what else could be hiding in this game? And, how do we get from there? Is there anything else hidden in here? Beak bomb this, explore here. The whole of Banjo-Kazooie became a mystery cork board with string attached. And the only other egg that felt right to me was the one in the wine cellar.
Well, and I would say, too, the appearance of the other eggs just being there, I would say that's more a lack of interiors for Banjo-Kazooie, because, you can't have the egg just appearing outside somewhere. It always has to be interior. And with Mad Monster Mansion, that's why you get 2, just because there's more there. Like, there's hardly anywhere that you could hide it in Mumbo's Mountain, right? Because you're like, oh,
Yeah.
we got the ticker tower interior. That's it, So I could see why they did that. But yeah, I agree with you. I wish they did have more little secret locations, like under a floorboard that's barred up or something,
Yeah, it is affirming to see that, yes, those eggs were always part of the plan, because there were theories for years that some of those eggs were actually decoy eggs to ward off hackers. Like, if you collect those eggs, then Stop and Swap won't work for you. And the only reason that...
Which was only further helped along by Ghoulies.
Yes. And then, later on, when they did the XBLA versions and Nuts and Bolts, kind of like the latter day Stop and Swap that they got working, it was only that they included those eggs because everybody already knew them because of Game Shark and publishing the Sandcastle codes and everything. So, like, it's nice to see that, they were always part of the plan, but I was, at one time, a little skeptical because I thought, the Lago one doesn't really feel right to me. It feels like it's almost like a trap for those who were so impatient they could not wait for Banjo-Tooie. But yes, then it says... the scenes that they need to recreate from Donkey Kong 64. A recreation of the scene showing the fridge that contains the ice key opening in DK's hut. More on that in a second. A recreation of the scene showing the glass case that contains the gold DK bust shattering. More on that in a second. And then the ice key and the gold DK bust, like those 3 different colored eggs, So...
yeah.
Steve, first of all, how does it feel? Because you were the one to discover that the Stop and Swap item that was going to be in Donkey Kong 64 that does not exist anywhere within the code of Donkey Kong 64 was going to be a golden Kong bust that resembles Donkey Kong, because you found it still in the German Donkey Kong 64 player's guide.
So I said to Greg, too, completely cathartic. It was validation like I've never experienced, because a lot of Stop and Swap, for a lot of the people following it, has never been confirmed. You'll get rare things like Paul Makachek, for instance, because for a very long time, I didn't even know for sure that the golden bust in Creepy Castle was part of Stop and Swap, because people were asking me, how do you know this for certain? I'm like, it's my best guess, because this is the only thing that's been changed in the strategy guide from one to the other, and the only other thing is the extra room in Crystal Cave. So it would seem that those two would be linked. Not entirely sure. And then, of course, on the Retro Hour podcast, that's when Paul Makachek came forward and said, yes, we did have something in, and he couldn't recall what it was, and that's what made it even more kind of, oh, maybe he's not talking about this, but it was verified and everything that, oh, we had, all these things that were supposed to be on a pedestal, and we took that out as the game was getting going. Like, we had to very quickly erase a lot of things because Stop and Swap was canceled, so we had to quickly go through it. And then, you're like, oh, okay, that would be what's on the pillar there. So to actually get this in writing, that is so rare, pun not intended, to see, because a lot of it is just mindless speculation that you're trying to piece things together and make them work with other things. And there's a ton of theories over the years that have been entirely proven wrong, that we're now looking back on going, oh, we were way off with that. But the logic seemed at the time to check out. So with this now, you're looking at it going, we found this little inkling of this like string that was leading us down this tunnel, and to finally pull back and go, oh my God, this was entirely the right path the entire time. Like, I can't tell you how amazing it was to open that Twitter thread once I was notified that he posted. And I'm reading through it going, oh, okay, we've got the explanation there. That's really cool. Models, graphics needed. And I scan the page going secret eggs. And then to see the word golden DK bust, I'm like, oh, it's there. He's going to talk about it. Oh my God. I'm like, and I just went back to the first page and started reading just ravenously, because I'm going, oh my God, this is going to talk about everything. So it's unbelievable that, that part of Stop and Swap was hidden from us for that was one of the most recent discoveries we've actually had for Stop and Swap. And now to see it come true is, it's insane. Like, we've had stuff buried in the past, like Stop and Swap is now like nearly 30 years old kind of thing, or more than that now, actually. So to come with this one element that's probably about I'd say 4 years old at this point and is now confirmed along with the rest of us. It's like Stop and Swap really is the gift that keeps on giving. Like there's always new things to discover, it seems, you know?
Yeah, like for me, it was simply a case of Occam's razor, or I guess a Kong's razor, a Kong's razor ridge. Because once
I thought it couldn't get worse.
what? Yeah, it can always get worse, buddy. Trust me. So once you found that in the player's guide, in the German player's guide for Donkey Kong 64, and having that fax from Paul Makachek, well, not from Paul Makachek. Paul Makachek revealed the facts from Nintendo angrily to the Stamper brothers on October 1st, 1999. So it's just like, okay, this thing was originally going to be on the mysterious pillar in Creepy Castle. And in the live stream, Courtney was very excited when we started talking about the pillar. Courtney, one of the biggest Donkey Kong 64 fans still out there today, and just loves all of the nuances of that game. Also, hello to Malik and Jeff, who have joined us. Jeff, who just got back from Down Under, Costa Rica, not that far down. Australia. So anyway, so it was just like, okay, so this is something that was still like in the game late enough that it was going to be included in one of the international players' guides. This is such a specific piece of artwork. It's clear to me that this correlates. You know, and so for me, like, there's never any doubt that the golden DK bust was in fact a Stop and Swap item from Donkey Kong 64. But it's a whole other thing to actually, as you said, see it in writing or see it in their weird, unprofessional Comic Sans font for their documents. And, you know, it's just like, wow, like, we were right. And granted, generally speaking, I feel like we're usually right when it comes to Donkey Kong related matters. Everything else I've been wrong about in my life. But this one specific niche, this specific area of expertise, I'm like, yeah, when Steve brought that information, that all made sense. And that was reality. And it turns out that I wasn't just feeling, you know, self-aggrandizing at the moment. No, like we had a successful read of that. So good job, Steve.
Thank you, Hyle.
Anyway, so the gold DK bust confirmed. Also, can we talk about the fridge? Because the fridge, we've known about the fridge for so many years. The fridge, the fridge in Donkey Kong 64's version of DK's Treehouse, which we here at DK Vine call the Watchtower to differentiate it from the Treehouse in DKC or the Jungle Hut in Returns Onward. But the Treehouse in DK64, we've long seen very, very pixelated screenshots of this. It's been called a stall. It's been called a shower. It's been called a freezer or fridge. It turns out it was the latter. But it has Banjo and Kazooie's head, their little head icon on the side of it. And so it was always just assumed that this would have some correlation to Stop and Swap once we figured out that Donkey Kong 64 was intended to be included as part of Stop and Swap, which threw me when we first figured that out, once people, you know, found text for the ice key in the game. And then later on, you know, finding the animations that were still in there that would zoom in on that one corner of the treehouse where that freezer, where that fridge was going to be, and then cutting to Crystal Caves, mysteriously.
And we now know why that is. We'll discuss that more once we talk about the ice key and everything. But, you know, we now know fully what that cutscene used to be, because there was a lot of theories of like, oh, of course. And I was one of the proponents going, it does that cutscene because you're watching Donkey Kong go in it, and then it's going to transport you. So that's why and that's wrong. We finally ended up learning what that cutscene was for. But yeah, we'll definitely discuss that later. But I just want to take a second and talk about the idea that we actually have an image of the DK fridge, or the BK fridge rather. Now I'm turning into Gregg Mayles with the DK BK thing. Do we actually have an image of that to begin with? Because a lot of everything of what Gregg has revealed is text. We don't have an image of the bust in the document. It's only through the strategy guide that we have that image. And it's only, it's not in-game screenshot. It's, a rendering of an illustration inside a strategy guide. So it's kind of removed from the actual game itself. For the fridge, the only reason that we know what that looks like is because somebody from Nintendo on the Japanese version of their website happened to upload an image of the starting area. They didn't even intend to go, oh, I want to show off this BK fridge. They literally have it on the Japanese website. They're going, oh, you start in the treehouse. Well, let me grab an image of the treehouse. Boom. And they happen to have that in the image. They then uploaded that as a GIF to the site where it was preserved for the next 30 years. Like at any time, that image could have gone down. At any time, they could have just picked another image or replaced it with something else. Like we are so lucky to have that image to understand what that is,
Yeah, for sure. A lot of this was just happy accidents and not catching everything in all the international corners of Nintendo. And that's how we were able to basically recreate a lot of this in our heads before it was confirmed this last December. Anyway, so then it moves on. The next part of the document says the secret eggs. And it's funny, they call them secret eggs here. I always call them question mark eggs. I don't know what
mystery eggs here.
Yeah, mystery eggs. So yeah, it's funny that we've never actually agreed upon the correct vernacular for any of this, but it's fine. We all have our kinks. We all have our preferences. It says the player must find and activate any of the 6 secret egg switches hidden on Spiral Mountain in Banjo-Tooie. And I was like, okay, so it was always going to be in and around Spiral Mountain. One of my biggest complaints about how they solved all of this in Banjo-Tooie as we got it on the N64 in 2000 was that it felt so perfunctory. It felt so tossed off, especially with the way a lot of these secret items were just in and around Spiral Mountain. And I was like, there should have been more pomp and circumstance and mystery concerning this, but this was always the plan, even when Stop and Swap was going to work. Now, I like this a lot better than what we got with those little googly-eyed cartridges, but, it's still cool to see that even though we got a compromised vision, it wasn't as far off as we had daydreamed.
Yeah.
So it says they'll need a recreated Banjo-Tooie cut sequence that shows the relevant egg appearing or event happening to allow access to an egg in Banjo-Kazooie. We already knew that. Once the sequence has finished, Bottles will explain. I guess Bottles' spirit. Maybe they hadn't figured out he was going to be dead at this point, but
maybe so, yeah.
Yeah, it says Bottles will explain how the cold swap works. He will repeat this message if you return to any of the molehills near the switches and speak to him. The player must then switch off Banjo-Tooie and plug in Banjo-Kazooie within the allowed time limit. I wonder, how they would communicate the time limit and how stressful that would be for any kid who who's
that was
feeling like they have to defuse a bomb or something.
Well, and we know, too, from experience, sometimes when you blow on an N64 game and you put it on, it doesn't turn on right away. So sometimes you need a second go. So that would have been even more stressful, just panic swapping,
Panic swapping is the name of my garage band.
So we have, the other side of it too. We'd always known with this document that it would have told you narratively how to do it, but there's a difference in the document explaining it and how that would have operate in game.
Yeah.
So we've always wondered, how would you get across this idea to players in a narrative way? So in the end, they just said, no, we'll just have Bottles kind of break the fourth wall and just explain, you're going to take this game out, you're going to put another game in and do it within a time limit and stuff like that. But it's weird because if you look at DK64 and you look up the whole plan that they had here for unveiling it all, you would have seen a cutscene that would show you the location in, for Donkey Kong 64, you would have seen in Banjo-Kazooie Waz's Cave the ice breaking, and then it would have gone back to DK64. I think naturally, if you do just put that order of operations, the player would then go, did that actually just happen? And then they'd turn off the game, they'd put in DK64 and turn it on, and then that's part of the magic, right? Is you would accidentally discover that. But it is interesting to see. They're like, okay, we're going to have to tell players, like, through narrative here, this guise that, okay, this is what you will do now. It's not just up to you kind of figuring it out. We're going to give you a step-by-step process using Bottles the Mole as our guide here. So it is interesting to see that.
I still think it would have seemed more natural than, it's a Banjo-Kazooie cartridge. And what's inside? Yeah. It's the ice key, only smaller and less impressive.
Yeah.
All right, so then it says the player then plays Banjo-Kazooie and collects the secret egg. The player must then switch off Banjo-Kazooie and plug in Banjo-Tooie within the allowed time limit. If the process is done successfully, when the game restarts, Bottles will tell DK to look on his pause screen view totals page. The game brings up the desired information automatically, where the secret egg will have been added to the Stop and Swop screen. So, we both think this is a typo. They were either copying and pasting, or they just had a little bit of a brain fart. They didn't literally mean Donkey Kong will be there in Spiral Mountain in Banjo-Tooie. Right?
Especially on his pause screen view totals page.
yeah. It's like, whoa, Donkey Kong is just making himself at home here. He's just coming right in and just saying, this is mine now. I'm the bigger star.
After this is done, you pause the game, and it's just the Donkey Kong 64 menu in Banjo-Tooie. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo. You're just going through the whole thing. Gregg Mayles is telling the team, look, we got to create everything. They're like, oh, no.
Yeah, so we think that was going to say BK or maybe just Banjo, and because it refers to he, singular. Yeah. Male
I think
pronoun.
He meant to put BK and he put DK. I think that's the Occam's razor ridge here.
Okay, well, from there it says, once any game slot on Banjo-Tooie has collected any secret egg, in parentheses, egg 1, from Banjo-Kazooie, and has successfully transferred it back to Banjo-Tooie, all the game slots on Banjo-Tooie will now have egg 1, as this is a cartridge-to-cartridge feature, not a slot-to-slot one. Unfortunately, it says in parentheses. However, to prevent the other two game slot players getting egg 1 without doing any work, we will make it so they have to follow the same switch hitting process before they get their reward. When either of the other game slot players do this, egg 1 will simply be added to the Stop and Swop screen as before. So this is a new revelation, because we always knew that Stop and Swap wasn't just limited to the game file. It was actually per cartridge. And it was like, okay, well, how will this look then if you start a new game file long after the fact in, say, Banjo-Tooie? Well, now we know you still have to do a little bit of work to activate any of this. You just won't get the same magic of going back into Banjo-Kazooie every single time. And, like, one of the things I love about the era we live in now, one of the few things I love about the era we live in now compared to then, is that...
Yeah. No psychotic president? Oh, wait, no, never mind.
I can go to my NSO files of Banjo-Kazooie, and I have a specific save state file for not having the Stop and Swap items, for the Stop and Swap items being unlocked but not claimed, and then one post collecting all the Stop and Swap items. So I can get all three versions of Banjo-Kazooie as it relates to the Stop and Swap items anytime I want on demand without having to own 3 separate cartridges. So that's nice.
That's what I've been doing the whole time. I'm seriously in debt, Hyle. I have hundreds of cartridges.
Hundreds of cartridges. Oh, yeah, because you have to have one where you've only collected the cyan egg, and yeah, I get
Well,
it.
you got to test it out, right?
I get it.
In case
yeah,
they're
no.
fakes. In case
Yeah.
they're fakes.
Yeah. All right. So then it says the same process applies for the other 5 secret eggs. Thanks for clearing that up, document.
Yeah. It would have been really weird if it said, except the cyan egg. That's slot to slot, but not cartridge to cartridge.
Mm-hmm. Right. So then finally, when the player now enters Heggy's egg shed. So yes, Heggy is name dropped as early
Part of the plan.
as early as August 1999. Heggy was always part of it. Heggy wasn't a compromise. Good to know. I like you now more than I did, Heggy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all the things I said about you in the year 2000 onward, Heggy. You know, I was a hormonal teenager. I was angry at the world. You were, unfortunately, a scapegoat, or in this case, a scapegoat, for all of my grievances for how this was handled back in the day. But now I know you're always part of the plan, so you've risen, in my estimation, slightly. At the very least, I like you more than Canary Mary, so there you go, Heggy. Banjo will automatically throw the secret egg onto its predetermined nest, where it can be hatched to reveal the special feature inside.
So interesting to point out here, they don't have a plan. Like a lot of this is still kind of up in the air. Like with Banjo-Kazooie, they knew everything front to back. With Donkey Kong 64, they're like, the team has a plan. They've got some things. We know what they're doing there. With this one, they're going, we'll tell you all the lead up, everything. What do you get? We haven't decided yet. It's undetermined.
Mm-hmm. Jeff says Heggy is short for Hegseth. I'm sorry I read that. Just Andre says we're all vegetarians here. Which means you only eat Heggy. I guess if you really, really love her. Anyway, so yeah, like it's kind of cool to see how much of the Banjo-Tooie we got still corresponds with what was planned some 15 months before its release, back when Stop N Swop was still on the table, including activating the eggs in Spiral Mountain and Heggy's egg shed.
Yeah. Courtney also says, maybe you only eat her eggs, which is the only sensible, insane thing in chat in the last 20 minutes. I forgot how insane this podcast is.
Sometimes the chat gets on me because I don't read the chat. I'm like, well, one, I can't read every comment because it would break the flow of the episode. And two, there's a lot of comments I don't want to read. Yeah. So anyway, I still read it though. I still keep up with it. I'm still absorbing it, and it's still haunting me long after I end these episodes. So moving on, probably the most exciting item out of all of the 7 Stop and Swap items from Banjo-Kazooie, of course, is the ice key, Steve, because the ice key is what we could see with our own eyes for the observant while playing Banjo-Kazooie. The ice key represented a tier above the secret eggs because it clearly would unlock something. And what it eventually unlocked in Banjo-Tooie was very disappointing for me. The Mega Globo, which then, of course, you throw into Humba's little stew just outside of Witchy World, and then you get the Dragon Kazooie transformation, which admittedly is cool. I do like the Dragon Kazooie transformation, but you know, the ice key, we were thinking, oh, it's going to unlock a secret world. It's going to do this or that. However, if the full extent of the plan had come to fruition, then the ice key would have been the coolest fucking thing ever. Because let's read what it says for the ice key, and then we can get all into the details, because
there's a lot of nitty-gritty. Yeah.
As somebody who has long advocated that Donkey Kong and Banjo-Kazooie take place in the same world, beyond just Diddy Kong Racing, there's just so much robust evidence for it. But this would have made it manifest as early as 1999 for the doubters. And this is just great. All right, so the ice key will be transferred from Banjo-Kazooie into DK64, where it is placed in a fridge in DK's hut after it has been used. Banjo-Tooie will retrieve the key from here. So, Banjo-Tooie, you don't actually get the ice key from Banjo-Kazooie. You actually have to get it from Donkey Kong 64. Confirmed.
And I just want to stop here just for a second to now explain, as we teased before, what the cutscene was supposed to do.
Please.
Because for a long time, we're going, Donkey Kong would walk into the treehouse, go into the fridge or a freezer, because we didn't know what it was. We thought it was a shower, a lot of different things. We now know it's a fridge. The door would shut. You would then be teleported to Crystal Caves in front of that ice door. What actually is now factually in this document is you would have gone in DK64 with the ice key. You would have gone to Crystal Caves. You would have unlocked that ice door. And then once it was used inside that lock, it would then disappear. We'd have that cutscene of Donkey Kong's Treehouse start. We'd see the fridge door open. Ice key goes in. Door shuts, and then we go back to Crystal Caves to go, all right, now let's see what you've unlocked in here.
Yes. So, a little bit different than we had fantasized, but I mean, we were missing a key component there, so that makes sense.
Literally.
Yeah. So, I didn't intend that pun, it just happened naturally. So,
it's a nice ice pun that you can have for free.
The player must activate an undecided feature in Banjo-Tooie. A recreated Banjo-Tooie cut sequence shows the fridge door opening on DK64, allowing access to the ice key inside. Once this sequence has finished, Bottles will explain how the cold swap works. He will repeat this message if you return to the molehill where the undecided feature was activated from. The player must then switch off Banjo-Tooie and plug in DK64 within the allowed time limit. The player then plays DK64 and collects the ice key. The player must then switch off DK64 and plug in Banjo-Tooie within the allowed time limit. If the process is done successfully, when the game restarts, Bottles will tell DK again to look on his pause screen view totals page. The game brings up the desired information automatically, where the ice key will have been added to the Stop N Swop screen. The player must now go into the Hailfire Peaks level on Banjo-Tooie and to the location of the ice safe that contains the Super Jiggy. When they get there, a cut sequence shows the ice key flying out of Banjo's backpack and into the keyhole. The safe opens, which allows the player access to the Super Jiggy inside. As soon as this sequence finishes, it is followed by another. The key disappears from the keyhole, and the scene changes to wherever we decide to put the ice key next for retrieval into the next N64 game. It's just they didn't know yet.
It's bolded, yeah.
Yeah. So the player can then collect the Super Jiggy. This is added to the Jigsaw total screen. Bottles pops up with a congratulatory message telling the player it must do something good if you can now complete everything else. When the player has done this, they will have 101 Jiggies instead of 100, and will get to see the special outtakes ending, which they are just ripping off from DK64. When Banjo-Tooie receives the appropriate signal from next N64 game, the location where the ice key was placed becomes accessible so that the player can unplug next N64 game, plug in Banjo-Tooie, collect the ice key, unplug Banjo-Tooie, and finally plug next N64 game back in. The ice key will now be transferred to next N64 game.
A lot of unplugging there, guys. That sounds like hot swapping.
Oh, God. It is exhausting to read this out loud because it is just so much back and forth. And I imagine if you are a child or a tween sitting on your bedroom floor with a pile of rare N64 games, you're just frantically trying to keep up with it all and just like sweating profusely.
Yeah. And this also explains, too, why there's that BKDK situation because Gregg is writing this out going, okay, wait, so we're grabbing the ice key from Kazooie and putting it to DK64, who then gives it to Banjo-Tooie, but in Banjo-Tooie you have to go back to DK64 to get the ice key that was gotten from Banjo-Kazooie to then grab it for Banjo-Tooie. Like, it's confusing as shit. I get it.
It is. But this really helps illustrate for me how the ice key thing was going to work, because one of the biggest mental stumbling blocks I always had was, wait, if Donkey Kong 64 uses the ice key, does that mean Banjo-Tooie's not going to use the ice key, or wasn't intended to use the ice key? Because, of course, we got an ice key in Banjo-Tooie, but I always thought that was just part of the make good because they had, initially promised it at the end of Banjo-Kazooie for use in Tooie. And so I was like, but at one time they were going to pull the rug out from under us and just use it in DK64? That doesn't seem right. But no, the ice key was the common factor between all Stop and Swap games.
And that's what we learned from Paul as well, because that was the one item that was supposed to be passed from game to game to game to game and like build up over time.
From character to character at that. That's really exciting. Exactly. Like, it would be like Donkey Kong's like, all right, I'm done with it. I'll keep it on ice for you for a year, Banjo. And then you can get it from my watchtower whenever you're ready. That's just amazing.
Yeah. So with this super jiggy concept now, because for those uninitiated, what would have happened? It plays out very, very similar in Banjo-Tooie, the version that we got. You'd go into Hillfire Peaks. There'd be that ice safe. You'd see the ice key come out of the backpack. It swirls, opens the safe, but there was no jiggy inside. It was a Mega Globo. So you would have collected that, and that, as Hyle alluded to before, you'd take that to Humba, you'd throw it into her pool, and that would have allowed you to get the Dragon Kazooie transformation. That was the big unlockable there. This super jiggy thing, if you haven't played Donkey Kong 64, you look at that idea and go, okay, cool. You do 101% and you get a bonus ending kind of bloopers sort of thing. But it's interesting because even though Stop and Swap was removed from Donkey Kong 64, and a lot of that was kind of plastered over very quickly, that is one of the rewards that we still did get in Donkey Kong 64.
Right.
And this might then answer unintentionally what was supposed to be behind the ice door in Crystal Caves, because that was one of the questions that we had for a really long time. We went, okay, we know that there's a fridge in Donkey Kong's treehouse. We know that there's a pillar with a gold bust atop it. We didn't know what that would unlock, but we knew what it was. But any time that we discussed the ice door in Crystal Caves, the implication was always, okay, so the door opens up and then you see, we don't know. We don't know what you're supposed to get in there. It's a complete and total mystery. We just know somehow it relates to the fridge. So looking at what we know now, that was probably going to be a 201st golden banana that was behind the door, which you do find in our final version of DK64 in Banana Fairy Island. Once you've snapped all 20 fairies,
right,
you then come back to the Banana Fairy Island. There's a big door that opens up, and then you get the banana. So my question then is, what was behind that door?
Yeah, I can't really picture what it would have been, because again, this was very late. They changed all of this in DK64, and I never gathered anything was amiss as far as the Banana Fairy stuff. So that is surprising to consider that. Yeah, you're probably right, Steve. I will agree with you here that I think if we are to see what they had planned for Tooie and what like it mirrored with DK64, if we're to view those next to each other, then yeah, it's likely that the golden banana with the rare logo on it would have been obtained from this, but I don't know. Like, it doesn't say for sure in the document, so it's very likely.
Yeah.
But
still on the side of speculation.
yes. Hello to TJ in the live stream. Hello to S Monaco in the live stream. Thank you for joining us. But yeah, the outtakes ending in DK64. We knew that the ice key would have unlocked a secret ending in DK64. And it's clear that the secret ending we did get in the game would have been this. So,
and that was teased, of course, in the document that told them to remove Stop and Swap.
Yes.
Because at the time they said, if you, because they were trying at that point to salvage the feature while telling Rare to remove it. So they're like, scrap whatever you have, but here's how you might be able to make it work and not sue the pants on us in the meantime. So they ended up providing something, and they said, if you do all this correctly, if you can find some alternative way of doing it in cartridge, then your secret ending can remain and all your unlock. And so when people looked at that, they said, oh, okay, I completely understand now that, this secret ending was one of the rewards from the beginning that was tied to the ice key. And now this document confirms that the secret ending that we're going to see was in fact this.
Yeah. And I thought that the outtakes ending was kind of cute. The only reason I really like it nowadays is that it accurately predicted Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, the next mainline Donkey Kong game after DK64, because it was
That was intentional.
It was Cranky Kong doing the auditions for Donkey Kong Dolphin, which of course would become Jungle Beat. And of course, Cranky Kong would view none of the characters being good enough or fresh enough for that game. And so he just gave it to Donkey Kong and didn't cast anyone else. So
next.
It actually works. It actually works in a metatextual sense. So I kind of love it now. But yeah, I do think that, you would have just then gotten the equivalent of the Super Jiggy is this golden banana with the Rare logo on it. And then from there, the next N64 game, whatever that is, could have been Perfect Dark. Skips, who's joined us, asked how does Perfect Dark tie into it? Well, assuming that Stop and Swap would have continued, without any hitches, and also that Nintendo would have been cool with Rare allowing an M-rated game to be part of all of this, then you would have gotten something maybe similar in Perfect Dark, like the ice key then unlocks who knows what else, but some sort of golden or some sort of extra version of something in that game. And then,
Joanna Dark would have used the Briegel Blaster at one point.
But
I have to say, though, too, with the age rating, that might have been a big issue on the horizon, because they tried to put a Perfect Dark poster in Bottles' house in one of the children's rooms, and they had to replace that with Juno because of the age rating.
Yeah, they did get...
So that was an issue.
Yeah. They did get references in, but it is, I think something that would have thrown a wrench into Stop and Swap would have been Perfect Dark and also the eventual destination of Conquer, which at this point in time was they were already working on Bad Fur Day. Bad Fur Day was already kind of the direction that the game was going, because it was later, just a couple months later, that they would officially reveal that. So.
And one last thing, too, before we move on to the DK bus, I just want to say, because the ice key is being stored into these different fridges, like we have DK's fridge, the only fridge that I can think of in Banjo-Tooie is the fridge in Grunny Industries. And that document was created on February 17th, 1999. So there is time to point that purpose to, we'll make this an actual fridge, and it's got all the magnets on it for all the future games that we might be swapping to. So that's what I think. It's totally like the loosest theory that I have. But in terms if they had to hide it somewhere.
So I thought the same thing. And also the episode artwork for the last Stop and Swap episode we did was of that freezer. And so, or that refrigerator in Grunty Industries with all the little magnets on it. And I think that is a clear, obvious, place they would stick the ice key. And then, we would then see Conker or Joanna or somebody take the ice key from the refrigerator. Which, how does that even work with Perfect Dark? Considering it takes place in a different era, a different year, a different decade.
You know what? Honestly, if I was an engineer at Rare or a concept artist or whatever, I would say have Joanna Dark walk up into Carrington Institute. There's a television that's off, and there's Banjo-Tooie as a physical object that you can interact with in the game. And if Stop and Swap is prepped, the cutscene begins as you go up to this machine. So you're literally playing in universe, because there's no way that I can see Joanna Dark with her serious mission with saving the clone president all of a sudden going, oh, and there's a talking bear over there that I need to, pass a key to. It just doesn't work, man.
I mean, it could work. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
There's been far sillier crossovers.
Well, we
but,
saw it work, of course, with the teaser with Conker and Joanna Dark there, right?
yeah, and she was eventually in that Worms game.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So she was an IDARP with all the others. That worked fine.
Yeah. We can make it work.
I think that we're just speculating that Perfect Dark would have been part of it. It likely would have been cut off at the knees there. And again, Conker would have had the same problem. And then, of course, Dinosaur Planet never even made it out on the N64. So... Mickey Speedway USA. There might not have been another Stop and Swop game by the time of Tooie, and they would have just closed it off there.
Yeah. Here's the thing, right? The cancellation of Stop and Swop might not have been the only hurdle they'd have to get across.
The hurdles would have kept coming. Is the problem? We're talking
the cancellation is the first.
We're talking about a hypothetical timeline where everything went off without a hitch, including like the original vision. Like, it might not even been Dinosaur Planet. It might have still been Dino Island at that point, but we would have looked at it like a far more cohesive iteration of the DKU than the one we got. This is riding high off of 97 and 98 where these plans were made. And it wasn't until October 99 where everything started getting a little hinky.
That's putting it lightly.
Yeah, like I still like the Daydream though. There's no harm in it. Like just imagining how it would have crossed over into Perfect Dark or Conker. Jeff says, "I've got to run, everyone. Congratulations on a new season, Hyle. Love you all." Jeff, you're going to be on the show in a few weeks. Yeah. Anyway, and TJ says, DK's in-game model for 64 is one of my favorite looks for him, but looking back, it's so weird he's completely bipedal in that. I mean, I don't know, like, he was getting more human-like throughout the whole Rare era, so, it's...
Yeah. The next game would have just been him as a man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it because the Kongs are basically just furry humans at the end of the day. So, anyway, talk about the gold DK bus, though. Let's go from furry humans to golden apes.
Yeah, I'm ready to bust.
All right. Well, do that on your own time, please. It says, there is a gold bust in DK64, located in a glass case on the creepy castle level. This can't be got during normal play. There are some grammatical errors in this document. This wasn't meant for public distribution, so they didn't give it a proofread. It's fine. The player must activate an undecided feature in Banjo-Tooie. A recreated Banjo-Tooie cut sequence shows the glass case shattering on DK64, allowing access to the gold DK bust inside. Once this sequence has finished, Bottles will explain how the cold swap works. He'll repeat this message if you return to the molehill. I can't say molehill. I've struggled every single time I've had to read the word molehill, and I don't know why. I say molehill all the damn time. I don't want to make a mountain out of this molehill.
I was just going to make that stupid pun.
But why can't I say molehill when it counts? All right.
Maybe if it was hyphenated, it'd be better.
Maybe, yeah. It's running together. Molehill.
Malahala.
He will repeat this message
Holy moly.
If you return to the molehill where the undecided feature was activated from. The player must then switch off Banjo-Tooie, plug in DK64 within the allowed time limit. The player then plays DK64 and collects the gold DK bust. The player must then switch off DK64 and plug in Banjo-Tooie within the allowed time limit. If the process is done successfully, when the game restarts, Bottles will tell DK to look in the multiplayer options on the game selection screen. Donkey Kong and possibly others from DK64 will now be available as controllable multiplayer characters.
Yeah, we have to pause for a second because the second that I read that when this thing was released, I thought of you immediately and said, I gotta know what he thinks about this because that's gonna blow his mind.
You think back to 2019. E3 2019 with the reveal trailer, Banjo and Kazooie in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and the way it was framed with them reunited with the Kongs and K. Rool. And it was just the coolest validation for the years of service I've given to Rare and the concept of the DKU. This would have been the same thing. And granted, this would have been less at the time because it was only 2 years after Diddy Kong Racing, so none of this was in dispute at the time. This was all just taken for granted. It's like, yeah, they're all friends. This is all the same world. So I would have still been over the moon. Like early days DK Vine, like in our first 3 months of existence, we would have been typing in all caps, in our stupid, exuberant, tween ways that we communicated back in the day.
All leet speak.
Yeah, this would have been, like, even as somebody who isn't a multiplayer guy, like, wasn't into really the death matches of Banjo-Tooie, that would have really piqued my interest.
Well, probably you probably do play as Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong, at least for any Mario Kart 64 game. So
I have to. I mean, Steve, I only play as Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, King K. Rool, Banjo and Kazooie, and sometimes maybe Fox McCloud in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Like, I will not allow myself to play as any characters who aren't native born to the DKU. It's just the way I am.
Right. So yeah, as I explained before, seeing this in text, finally, after all these years, confirming that this is a definitive reward for Stop and Swap, and it was to do with that golden pillar, which makes sense. You look at that golden bust and you go, okay, I see there's something DK-wise, that you would have collected. And then in the next game, when you swap it correctly, that's what it unlocks. It's a feature in that other game that's directly tied to what we would have had in the former game, which is the character. And that's what we speculated on the very first episode of the Kongversation when we were talking about what we want the Stop and Swap rewards to unlock. It was that. So that's very validating to see and very cool to be like, no, that was part of the original plan that Rare had. It wouldn't have been characters in the campaign mode, probably, but the multiplayer mode, yes, you would have been able to play as other characters within the Rare universe, crossing over into other games.
Yeah, and I mean, just talk about a payoff. Like, that is the pie in the sky, the Canary Mary and Cloud Cuckoo lands of just the wildest fantasies you would have about this. And it would almost seem like it's too good to be true. Like, yeah, it's not playing as the Kongs in the adventure. That would break the game. I mean, that would be like, we're talking about putting Dixie Kong in Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Does that break that adventure because it wasn't designed for Dixie Kong? Well, then you add any of the other 5 Kongs to Banjo-Tooie. That wouldn't work. But in multiplayer, sure. And
also, too, just in multiplayer, because we've had the ice key basically swapping out for Dragon Kazooie, so we can see where it starts to unlock stuff, and then we go, no, our final version will be different. Ostensibly, I do think that Donkey Kong then would have been replaced with the Jinjo as multiplayer in Stop and Swap, right?
The Jinjo was the reward for which egg?
The yellow one.
The yellow one. I think that might have always just unlocked the Jinjo. Or, I mean, like, I don't see why that would be mutually exclusive. I mean, this is a reward for the gold DK bust. So there's nothing to make good for here if there's just no gold DK fair. Bust that ever exists. And I think at this point, it's just like, there's no need to. I mean, I don't know if, like, the talks of maybe, the Stampers looking to sell, were coming up, and they were thinking about future-proofing this at all, and, maybe let's not put the Kongs in multiplayer in Banjo-Tooie, because they were still pretty liberal with their use of Donkey Kong stuff in Tooie itself. So, yeah, I don't know, but I think once Stop and Swap was scuttled, I don't think it was really on the table to do this at all, because this would have just been a really special treat for those diehard fans who did have all of the games and wanted to see how they connected.
And an absolute nightmare for any localization on XBLA because they would have had to take out Donkey Kong and replace it with something else.
Conga and Chimpy, and
there you go.
Here's Tootie instead of Tiny. She's just been hiding in multiplayer. I don't know, but yeah, it would have made like future versions of Tooie that without the auspices of Nintendo, quite a chore. But then again, like Stop and Swap, you can't do Stop and Swap on NSO anyway.
Right.
Like even if Stop and Swap was a thing, I don't think it would work on NSO, considering similar features like character transfers in the Mario Golf or tennis games. Like those don't work. So yeah.
One thing I do want to talk about too, because this is the last time that we'll mention the pillar before we move on. And I just got to get the one thing out. I've been thinking about it a lot, sadly. Just looking at the way they kind of covered everything up in the game, right? Because they removed the fridge from the treehouse, and that's gone. So they don't have to worry about that. They've paved over the ice door. So they just took the model out. They paved over that. But the pillar was the only thing that was just left. They're like, we'll take out the golden statue, but the pillar's going to stay. And that can only bring about questions. Like everybody was going, what the hell is this empty pillar for, Rare? Like it was asked, like, in their tepid seat and the scribes and everything like that, if everybody's so confused about it. And I'm gonna pitch to you my idea for what they should have done. Okay.
Okay.
So Tiny Kong has 5 golden bananas in Creepy Castle, right? She hovers across that toxic goo, like the Toxic Tower stuff, on the hands to get her first one. The next one's that Frantic Factory race. She goes into Frantic Factory via that weird, monkey port odd thing that all of a sudden we're in Frantic Factory. Okay, sure. You have the garbage can fly.
It's not Frantic Factory. It is just another race against the car in Creepy Castle. There's a lot about DK64 that doesn't make sense.
It's just weird.
Yeah.
So there's the garbage can fly shootout, which if we're talking about short-sightedness, you can just play your instrument and instantly win that thing. You don't need to shoot anything. So there's that. You then have Snide's blueprint. So her Kasplat is like way at the bottom, like out of view. You really have to look for it. And then the final golden banana is a bonus barrel across a pit. So you have to ponytail twirl across the pit. You get to that bonus barrel. It's that teetering turtle trouble, which if we're talking short-sightedness again, did you know that you can win that bonus barrel challenge by just shooting the turtles in order? There's 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you just repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You'll get the banana every single time. There's no need to prioritize. Did you realize that?
I did not realize that. No. Sorry.
So, of those 5
Courtney wants to point out it is a model of Frantic Factory in Creepy Castle.
Oh, I get it, because the tiny.
It is just a like look at what the Kremlins have built. Look at this toy factory. Well, here's a model of the toy factory that we're putting in our museum.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. That I'll allow that. So, of those 5 things, you really can't move a lot because you're going that toxic goo. We've already built that. The garbage can thing that's already modded out. The bonus barrel across that pit. Let's take out that bonus barrel, put it in our back pocket for a second. We're going to grab that Kasplat and put it across the pit instead. Now we have a new gameplay challenge because you're going to have to fly over whilst avoiding its shockwave attack. Now we've made a gameplay element. You're going to have to either time that out or play your instrument to make it die, but then there's the added pressure of trying to make it over that pit to collect that blueprint. Now we have another secondary gameplay element that's kind of cool. Go up to the pillar in Creepy Castle. Take that bonus barrel that you have in your back pocket, set it up above the pillar. Now no one asks any questions.
Although some questions are fine. Like, I would have been okay. Like Giga Strike points out that they could have just left the statue there and just have it be unobtainable or like, just make it a, not an actual item that you can collect, but just part of the scenery,
right.
Like you could do that, and that's fine. I think it was more scorched earth considering how and if they had to like rearrange some things, like where's the secret ending going to be now? How do you activate it? And if they did change like what you get from the Banana Fairy Princess and everything, then I think there were just some considerations that, they didn't have enough time to make. Like, what about the pillar? Just leave the pillar. Fine, whatever. We're up against the wall here. We've got to get this game out. It's Nintendo's big holiday game for 1999. And there's going to be no secret eggs on our face if this thing is delayed.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just have to remove one ice key. That's it. The Banjo-Tooie team has their work cut out for them.
Traveler of the Stars, being the 2010's Returns baby, says, all of this is nonsense to me. well, yeah, there's a lot of history here, Traveler. Like I said, we did 4 other episodes on this, and even then, there's decades of parlance and terminology here. We can't get into it all. I'm sorry.
Also, Traveler here, if you're confused and wondering what this is all about, take that confusion, that feeling, stretch it out over 2 decades, and now you have what we have.
Yeah. All you need to know is Ice Key, 6 eggs, 3 rare games.
Yeah.
And yanking cartridges out in different
Amongst other
configurations.
things,
yeah. So let's talk about the last revelation here, Steve.
Yes. This is a new thing that we never knew about. It's very cool when these documents come out and there's always new information.
It's interesting because I kind of alluded to this possibility in the past. And it's nice to know, hey, I called it. I was right. The gold banjo bust. It says, there is also an undecided location in Banjo-Tooie where there is a gold banjo bust. This can be seen, but not got by the player during the game. When Banjo-Tooie receives the appropriate signal from next N64 game, because that's just the way they have it in the doc here. It just insert whatever here. The location where the gold banjo bust was placed becomes accessible, so that the player can unplug next N64 game, plug in Banjo-Tooie, collect the bust, unplug Banjo-Tooie, and finally plug next N64 game back in. The bust will now be transferred to next N64 game. The gold banjo bust could be a different object if required. If it remains a bust, the feature it activates when it is transferred to the next N64 game should have something to do with banjo.
Yeah. And unfortunately for all of us, Stop and Swap itself was a bust. So.
Yeah. And in this case, let's just pretend it was Conker, right? So you take the gold banjo bust into Conker, and then all of a sudden Banjo and or Kazooie or some permutation of the cast can then show up in maybe Bad Fur Days multiplayer and in the death mode, or death matches or whatever. Who's to say?
It's all speculative.
It is. It is.
Stop and Swap is.
So not only would the ice key be taken from the Grunty Industries fridge, we're just speculating, but it's so plausible. Not only would it be taken from there into Conker for, we say next N64 game. Yes, I know at one time they had 6, but in all likelihood, if this all went off as planned, there probably would have only been 4.
Yeah.
And, it would have been the final destination for the ice key then. Yeah. So
hindsight.
Yeah. And I don't think we can look at Bad Fur Day or even Star Fox Adventures as we know it and see any clear plans, because by the time those games were released, this was all ash. This was all just shattered dreams and tears. But oh my God, the possibilities. At the very least, we can sustain ourselves. Now that we know all of this, Steve, we can sustain ourselves on the hypotheticals of what if it all worked as planned, and what if there was at least one more game as part of this chain.
Yeah. We just have a quick question from Gigastrike here. Do you think they would have kept Dinosaur Planet on N64 if there was to be a Stop and Swap connection? Stop and Swap wouldn't have been enough to keep that going,
Yeah.
unfortunately. They at that point they were probably looking at sales figures and going, "Hey, GameCube is announced. They need some launch titles. We're looking to sell. We're looking to get out this game here, and if we keep it on N64, we're going to be very impacted by all these owners that have now simply bought the GameCube." So I think that was a very intense marketing strategy that they wanted to get on very quickly on the GameCube. And looking at it, it's like they kind of had to move, unfortunately. While I would have loved Dinosaur Planet as a swan song for the N64, I understand completely why management was like, look, we got to get a move on with this one. And unfortunately, I don't think Stop and Swap would have been a reason for them to go, no, wait, we should definitely do this for this one feature, So
not so much a swan song as a Cloud Runner chorus.
there you go.
No, I agree. Like, I think as cool as it would be for us fans to have that, and that extra Stop and Swap connection, I think just financially and also just presentation wise, I mean, Star Fox Adventures was a visual wonder when it came out in 2002. And I think as impressive as Dinosaur Planet on the N64 is, I think they kind of probably made the right call there to push it to the GameCube. And, this wouldn't have been known in 1998. And given how prolific Rare was with releases throughout the whole N64 era, I don't think they could have foreseen, we're going to be delaying this to the next Nintendo system, or this is going to enter development hell, being Conquer, or stay in development hell, and eventually become something that's far more niche and targeted to a mature audience. So, I completely understand why Paul Makachek and others hit upon this idea, and it's a brilliant idea. And it's the exact kind of idea. This is why I'm a Rare fan, because it was constantly surprising me in a lot of Baroque, gutsy ways, but also just at the end of the day, it all came down to characters I loved, and characters passing trinkets back and forth. This is the kind of stuff that's like catnip to me. And it's a reason why it's kept me in a trance since July 98, when I first found that ice key in Banjo-Kazooie. And I've been obsessed about this topic since. When I was talking with Paul Makachek, I was like, this is our generation's Paul is Dead, where we're just scouring everything for clues, looking for the next tantalizing piece of evidence that will support whatever hypothesis we have about this. And here we go. This isn't just Paul is Dead. We have the autopsy report right here.
Yeah. This is them trying to hire Fall Lennon and everything, or the fake Paul McCartney and everything.
William Campbell Shepard. We all know his name, Steve. Yeah.
Billy Shears, of course. Yes.
Yeah. Well, William Shepard, because what does a shepherd do? He shears the sheep.
See, they're even more speculative than we are. Man.
Did you know, Steve, that there was a Beatles cover band called Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots from, I believe, the year 1964 or 1965. And I'm like, who's Billy Pepper? Could that be who they got to replace Paul McCartney?
He was a sergeant at one point, I think.
He's got the Ontario Provincial Police patch on the Sergeant Pepper jacket.
Good old OPP, yeah.
He's Canadian, Steve. He's one of yours.
I see. And we killed him. How about that?
Whew. I love Stop and Swap, but we also have other people who love Stop and Swap besides the two of us, Steve. We got some calls for this episode. We do. You can always call the DK Vine hotline. We usually announce these topics. I announce them on social media, on our YouTube channel. I make a little post every time we have a Kongversation set. You can call in at 1-202-630-VINE. That's 8463. Leave us a message. We'll play a select grouping of calls and respond to any questions or comments therein. So, Steve, would you like to play our first call. All right, let's go ahead.
Hello, Steve. Hello, Hyle. This is Carl-Max calling in for the new Stop N Swop episode, and I won't be doing a bit this time because my wonderful, transcendent, life-changing bit was skipped over, and somehow I'll find a way to work past it. Instead, I want to do a little bit of speculation and get some opinions on it because I'm not the world's foremost Stop N Swop expert, but I did a sort of interesting idea came to mind to me. So the reason that Stop N Swop was canceled is because of hardware limitations, and there was going to be a revision of the N64 that would make there would lessen the time that internal memory was held onto, which would make the whole idea of swapping cartridges fast enough unfeasible. But take two assumptions in space. Number one, let's say that revision didn't happen, or a revision didn't end up targeting console memory, which would have made Stop N Swap feasible as an actual project. And also, if Nintendo, or Rare rather, stay with Nintendo either as independent or because they got purchased, and then that they would make games for the GameCube in perpetuity. The reason I bring that up is because some GameCube games were able to fit entirely onto the RAM. So Animal Crossing, I think a few others, they took up enough data that for Animal Crossing on the GameCube, you can literally take the disc out after you start it up, and you could just continue to play the game completely normally because it's stored on the RAM. So given that, what do you think might have been the possibilities for Stop N Swap on the GameCube? Because it seems there that would just be even more potentially feasible than the N64. Specifically for the Rare Scholar here, do you know if that could have been technically feasible in GameCube? What sort of possibilities could you envision for that? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thank you for taking the call.
Oh, well, thank you for the call. This is an interesting question because it's one I've never considered. This is kind of more along the lines of a Stop N Swap 2 for the next generation. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Steve?
So yeah, there's a lot of clever things that people discovered with the PlayStation 1 because it's a disc-based medium, whereas before this, Nintendo traditionally was all cartridge-based. There's a lot of interesting hardware tricks you can do with it. For instance, if there's one racing game, the name escapes me, but if you're playing this racing game, they say you can take out the game while it's loading a race and put in a music CD and close the tray and then play it. And then from there, whatever music CD you have will play for the track. And it's not overwriting the file. It's there's literally the sound of the game still in there, but you're listening to your music as well. So there's all these little nifty hardware tricks. And I'm sure that if they wanted to, they could put something like Stop N Swap onto the GameCube if they had any desire or inclination to. It would just be taking advantage of similar hardware tricks. For me, though, the interesting thing about Stop N Swap is the whole cartridge swapping thing. Mm-hmm. And because of that, talking with Paul and everything, you could even do Stop N Swap on the Game Boy because similar technology was being used there in their 8-bit machines. So the N64 was the first time they ever attempted it, but they could have tried it on the NES, the SNES as well. Nothing was stopping them aside from the absolutely insane idea that Stop N Swap is.
Right. Yeah. For me, part of that appeal is the cartridge-based nature of it all. I think the magic is lessened once you get away from cartridges as a medium. And maybe this is just me. Maybe this is just when I grew up, but the idea of Stop N Swap becomes far less interesting to me. On the Xbox 360, the whole Stop N Swap do-over we had with the XBLA versions of Kazooie and Tooie and Nuts and Bolts, far less interesting to me because the magic of transference between these physical items is lessened once you start bringing the cloud into things. Once you start getting just game data saved to your console or beyond, it just becomes, I know what you're doing. I see that. It's still cool, I guess. It's not magical. And granted, what they're discussing here is more along those lines where you're taking out a GameCube disc, and it's along the same lines of what we were doing on the N64, or what we're going to be doing on the N64. So I respect it, and I'm already thinking okay, so it'd be Grab by the Ghoulies, the GameCube version of Cameo, some sort of Donkey Kong Racing, Star Fox Adventures, this whole alternate timeline of Rare releases on the GameCube. That would have been cool to have a second Stop and Swop. Of course, they didn't even get it off the ground on the N64, so a lot of things have to go right in this timeline to even get there. But of course, I'd be for it. I mean, if anything, it would just completely reinforce the concept of the DKU well into the 21st century. So
It would have also been interesting too, because if you look at the PlayStation, I mean, technically having Final Fantasy on like 7 different discs, that would be Stop and Swop, put in disc 2 now. All right, there we go. I'm transferring my data.
yeah. And, I'm still intrigued by ideas to like do Stop and Swap properly in the future. Like, I know for a time, Playtonic was teasing that they were going to have some sort of Stop and Swap with the pirate treasure. It's never paid off. Hasn't paid off yet, but I still think there's something to this idea to this day, and I think you could hide some of the how-to behind it to make it feel a little bit special, to make it feel a little bit otherworldly, like it would have on the N64. But yeah, I think the moment kind of passed once Nintendo put the kibosh on it, and I don't see it really having the same kind of wow factor on later consoles, GameCube on up. But thank you for the call. It's something to consider all the same. And God knows we need to come up with new Stop and Swap topics now if we want to keep obsessing about this for the next 25 years. All right, let's play our
some life in it.
By the way, we're playing our second caller. So this is one call for every secret egg in Banjo-Kazooie. How special is that?
Yo, what up, DK Vine? It's John Tessier here, calling in for another episode of the Kongversation. And we're talking about Stop and Swap yet again. We all thought, we had closed the book on Stop and Swap, but then, Gregg Mayles just comes in and gives us everything. Just unveils the whole thing, and it's just like, wow. That's just so crazy. But my question to you guys, and you guys probably already discussed this, but I'm wondering, now that it's just all out in the open, it's kind of lost a little bit of its, it's not as cool, like now that we know everything, the mystery of Stop and Swap was all part of it, and now it's just out in the open and we just know everything. And as they say, the journey is always better than the destination. And I think that is true for Stop and Swap. I think the theories and the wondering and the going back and forth about it and just not getting an answer for so long was what made it so great. And if it had just worked normally, I don't think it ever would have been as big as it was. It would have just been like, oh, that was a cool thing they added to that game. But because it was this big mystery, it was awesome. So do you guys think it's not as awesome now? You know what I mean? Like that we just know everything. I feel like it would have been better if it was a mystery forever. But at the same time, I am glad we know what it is. Okay. Peace out. Have a good one, guys. Can't wait to listen to the episode. Bye.
Well, thank you for the call. It's a good question. Is it worth knowing all of this when we no longer have any mystery to chase? And to that, I say there will always be some mysteries related to Stop and Swap, even if they are just the purely hypothetical ones I mentioned before, like, the next N64 game, But I think that for me, the payoff is worth it, considering that we've had some of our suspicions confirmed, and I think having playable Kongs in Banjo-Tooie is enough to sell it for me. It's like, okay, that's pretty cool. That's really awesome. Also, just the idea that Donkey Kong would be keeping the ice key cold for Banjo and Kazooie for 1 year in his treehouse. Like, that's the kind of game-breaking, fourth wall breaking nonsense that I adore. And I also have the capacity or the ability to remember how I felt about things at any point in my life. So even though we are past the point now where we know all of this, I will always remember not knowing and how that felt and chasing those mysteries and trying to explore every corner of Banjo-Kazooie in the summer of 98. You know, like for me, I will always have that journey committed to my brain until I go senile. And I think that that's enough for me. Like, yeah, the journey sometimes is better than the destination, but I can always just look back on that journey with fondness because it is such a part of my fandom for all of this.
What I would add, if I'm to use a metaphor here, imagine you go into your backyard one afternoon and you're digging a trench for a deck or something, and you uncover a bone. Like it's a big bone, and you keep on uncovering it, right?
Wait, why are you finding bones in your backyard, Steve? Should I be worried?
This is why I said big bone, because I said if I just say bones, he's going to think it's a skeleton. No, like a human. No, it's a big bone. Like it's massive, and you keep on like, you know, ribs and everything, but they're massive. And you come to find out, oh my God, this is a dinosaur fossil in my backyard. And you keep on uncovering it. There's a paleontologist that comes by and he's able to tell you, yeah, this is a T-Rex skeleton. It was around during the Triassic period, and now it's in your backyard and everything. To then take that with what the color's saying, it's kind of like being, you know, at one point this dinosaur was alive. It was walking around. It was roaring. Like this dinosaur was once living and now it's dead. Isn't the mystery gone now? Isn't the allure gone? It's like, no, there's a fucking dinosaur fossil in your backyard. Like, that's cool as hell, you know? So that's the way I look at it, because, you know, you look at all the pieces together and you go, this is still something incredibly fascinating. Even though the mystery has been solved on some bits, as Hyle said, there's still mystery elsewhere. And I'll use that to segue back to DK64, because in looking through that game, trying to see where, you know, there was little remnants of Stop and Swop, there's certain areas of that game that you look on with a new light when you're searching that you go, that's curious. That's really suspicious. And I wonder if that was at some point to do something with this. Like the pillar, it has that similar kind of brain, you know, like little meddling where you go, that could be something. And if players who have played it before, and probably Courtney in chat will be like, yes, if you go into the mermaid's throne room in DK64 and you're swimming around, there is a porthole next to the mermaid. And it's just weird. It's got nothing behind it, but the area behind this porthole is fully modeled out. And like anything with Stop and Swap, where it's like we have a big sheet of glass, and then there's something that you collect, and then you take that somewhere else. This is perfect for it. And the thing that bugs me the most, there's two things. And Courtney's going, yeah, what's up with that? First of all, it's asymmetrical because there's no other porthole on the other side of the room. It's just on one end. And the other thing that's weird is the camera starts on that and then pulls back to show the mermaid when you first go in there. So there's those little things that you're going, okay, if there was something else for another game, because keep in mind, this document would have only pertained to things involving Banjo-Tooie. If they designed something specifically for Conquer, if that was a thing in DK64, then they wouldn't have put that on the Banjo-Tooie document. So, you know, there's something there. Now, Courtney does say, I always imagined that was where the pearls were supposed to go. And it was showing how they were stolen and it was empty, but it's never really explained. It could also be where a golden banana was supposed to appear, maybe, and it comes out. But there's just that little thing. You go, I don't know. This is weird. This is strange. This is giving me pillar vibes. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of adds up in that way. And it could be all speculation. But do you know what that is? That's that flavor that our previous caller is missing. That's going, oh, the mystery's gone, isn't it? It's like, no, that's lighting up my synapses. That's giving me that tasty little bit of mystery. Yeah. So, you know, there's always going to be stuff like that.
Hashtag pillar vibes. Yeah, I like that.
Exactly.
It is one of the things I do wish games would lean into more, like just have mysteries. Like I've always brought this up as a comparison to Stop and Swap, but I loved the urban legends that sprang up around, was it Vice City? One of the Grand Theft Autos where people thought Sasquatch was roaming the
San
woods.
Andreas.
San Andreas. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. There's no Sasquatches in Miami, but it was something that really did remind me of like the fervor that Rare fans got into in the late 90s. And I wish more games would lean into those like weird things that are there for no apparent reason. And maybe there's a payoff down the line, maybe not. Just keep them
Well,
talking.
speaking of Grand Theft Auto, rather, they have included Sasquatch stuff in the new one. Yeah, Gigastrike just said there's a ton of stuff in GTA 5.
Yeah.
And they've done mysteries that are like, GTA's been out for a while. Yep, Mount Chiliad, he's saying exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
They've since connect something with that game into Red Dead Redemption 2. And there's a whole sort of stop and swap thing now going on with that game. So, there's always that sort of tie-in mystery that if you can put it in your game, like fans like us will just obsess over it because it's so exciting to see something like that play out.
I think especially, and then we'll move on to the next call, but I think especially as the mystery has been taken out of the world around us, like we can have a satellite view of any corner of the earth at any time, and like stuff like urban legends, cryptozoology, stuff like that isn't as prevalent as it was in our past, because it feels like even if we don't know everything about the world around us, it feels like we do. And so I think we long for stuff that is just beyond us. Stuff that, like, for example, not just like how do you get the ice key and the secret eggs in Banjo-Kazooie, but how will it even connect to Banjo-Tooie was a mystery for a time. And It felt so unreal. And that's what I loved about every part of this process. And so, I just wish games would indulge us like this a bit more. I think Rare was really onto something winning here that speaks to the human psyche and what we long for, given the tight-knit globalized society we now live in. Like, we yearn for creatures in the dark. We yearn for something that's just beyond our reach, never to be obtained, but constantly stretching out to grab it. I don't know. I'm getting kind of morose now because I'm just getting sad about life, but what a salve the ice key was. All right, let's play our third call.
Hey, this is Kyle, member of your cult since about 2023. I want to say I'm very excited we're getting closure on Stop N Swop. I was born in 1999, so I wasn't around for the big mystery. In fact, but I've been fascinated with cut content in general for a long time. In fact, Stop N Swop and the whole story behind it was how I first learned about the Banjo-Kazooie series. It was on this now defunct web series, like from game trailers, called Pop Fiction. And their video on Stop N Swop had me so intrigued, and I think that's what got me all interested in cut content in gaming and general media. I'm sure it's not I don't quite have the same experience as it for you, but I'm glad that you get some sort of closure, and so do we. Like, I only found Banjo-Kazooie good, but not great, and I didn't even finish Tooie when I ended up playing them in the early 2010s on Xbox Live, but your enthusiasm has been infectious, and it's helped me and your podcasts have helped me get through my boring as sin job, so this is just a very exciting time all around. It's so interesting to imagine what could have been, and I can't help but wonder if Stop N Swop, now it turned out, played at least a minuscule part in Rare choosing to take Microsoft's deal. There was definitely much more pressing matters, but you can't help but wonder.
Well, thank you for the call, Kyle. For one thing, it's interesting to hear your perspective, given that you were born in 99, right when Stop N Swop was being cut off at its knees. Yeah, because it is a perspective that I cannot live or experience myself. And Steve, I know you can relate. Like, Traveler of the Stars was joking in our chat how incomprehensible a lot of this was. And it's like, yeah, I can't see it because I have been part of this process, as has Steve, as has a lot of the old timers in our chat, since it was a mystery that we didn't even have a name for. It was just the ice key and the eggs. And like, as I've gotten older and I've seen younger generations of fans join us for this journey, it's been actually a privilege to really see everything through your eyes, because I don't know, it speaks almost to the enduring nature of all of this, and that it's not just going to be confined to millennials and, just, the older Gen Z audience who have any passing interest in this, and that, people will be talking about Stop and Swap 100 years from now, hopefully, if there is anything 100 years from now. But
we'll all be surrounded a fire on an irradiated world going, Stop and Swap was a pretty cool idea.
Yeah,
just roasting a rat.
We'll be back in the caves, and they'll just be doing cave art of the 6 eggs and the ice key. Yeah. Future civilizations will find it and have no idea. It'll become their Stop and Swap. But I don't think this had anything to do with the whole buyout, because remember, Rare wanted to be purchased outright by Nintendo. They just wanted that financial stability as game development was getting more expensive as we entered the new millennium. So they would have been happy being bought by Nintendo. They would, it wasn't anything. I know a lot has been made of the rift between Nintendo and Rare, but I think a lot of that is ultimately overblown. A lot of stories were told at the time to kind of explain it, because it was like parents divorcing. If you had grew up with Rare and Nintendo as this partnership, this creative collaboration, it was kind of shocking no longer having them together. And so it was like, where was the rift? Was it Conquer? Was it Stop and Swap? What was it? Donkey Kong 64 being an overbloated mess. Sorry, Courtney. And the truth is, I think there was no ill will on Rare's side. There's probably some consternation at times, having to do the Disney games. They maybe didn't want to do those, but I think all in all, that's just the cost of doing business with anybody.
Yeah, that's true. And I'd say, too, for the entry point of anybody with Stop and Swap, because you mentioned the Pop Fiction video, and I remember watching that when it was first published and seeing that all unfold. But anybody that plays Banjo-Kazooie at any point, because there's so many different ways to play it. We have the N64 that we grew up with, but then it was ported to XBLA a decade after that. It was then brought to the NSO after that. It's now going to be on Evercade after that. There will always be a fan approaching this game for the first time. They're going to reach Freeze Easy Peak. They're going to backflip up to collect that Jinjo, and they're always going to see that ice key. And the first thought is, what is that? Oh, it's a key. How do I get it? I can't. And that's how you start the mystery for every generation. We all have the same entry point.
And also just the fact that it's clearly supposed to be a collectible, but it's not like any collectible we have seen. I mean, Freeze Easy Peak is, World 5 of Banjo-Kazooie? So by that point, you are familiar with what the game presents to be collected. And
it's the level right after Bubblegum Breeze. So.
Thanks, ChatGPT, doing a bang-up job. Thanks.
Meta AI, well ahead of the game.
Thanks for making me pay hundreds of dollars for a firewall every year. Anyway. Woo! Woo! All right. Thank you for the call. Let's play our fourth caller.
Hey, it's Tofu, and I am a sick freak whose favorite game of all time is Banjo-Tooie. So when Gregg Mayles posted some concept documents for the 25th anniversary, I was really happy about it. And then he just, didn't stop. For the next 3 weeks or so, he just kept posting all this Tooie stuff, and I'm like, stop, I'm already full. But he didn't stop. He, in fact, stopped and swapped, and he posted stuff about Stop and Swap, which is obviously the meat and potatoes of this, but I gotta mention some other stuff in the Tooie docs. So first of all, may we mourn the loss of the scrapped character Condom Man. May his soul be under protection from Log for all eternity. But the most interesting thing to me was this doodle of Grunty in the Bath of Life, which I guess she was originally going to use instead of the bob, but she also apparently was going to throw inanimate objects in it and bring them to life. And I'm like, could that be an explanation for all these googly-eyed object characters throughout the DKU? Obviously a shit ton of Banjo-Kazooie characters, but what about B. Locker, Frankie the Pitchfork, Condom Man? Were they all born from the Bath of Life? I mean, it was scrapped, but it's fun to think about. Anyway, Stop and Swap. I mean, what else is there to say? We could have had Kongs in Tooie multiplayer, maybe shooting with their fruit guns instead of Kazooie, though it is amusing picturing Donkey Kong using Freakle Blaster. The fact that they were originally going to use the ice key to unlock a Super Jiggy. In my daydreams of a new Banjo-Kazooie game, I've always imagined them collecting a giant Jiggy called a Giga Jiggy, and the fact that was somewhat real at one point is amazing to me. But one thing I found funny about this is, I don't know if this was a typo and they meant to put BK, but frequently throughout this it says Bottles says to DK. Are they implying that Bottles would have just randomly showed up in DK64 to explain Stop N Swop once you activated it? Like, is Bottles really tight with DK like that? He's got molehills on DK Island? Or is he just, like, floating over there as a ghost? I mean, DK64 released before Tooie, so I guess he would be alive, but, like, if you stop and swap between those games once Bottles is already dead, I just figured it out. I just figured out everything. The true purpose of Stop and Swap is to go back in time to revive Bottles in Donkey Kong 64, swapping out his corpse for his alive body. He's no better than Grunty. I mean, think about it. Stop and Swap, Big O Blaster, those are similar naming conventions. B.O.B. could actually stand for Bring Back, all one word, Bring Back Old Bottles. And then, I don't know, maybe you'd send him over to Conquer to fight in the war so he can die again and just perpetually die and be revived. Oh, God, Jam Jars, I've said too much. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, Tofu coming in with the production values. Thank you for the call. Well, so we're not going to get into all the other documents that Gregg shared, but Tofu brought them up a little bit. And yeah, the Bath of Life I found interesting just because how closely it correlates with Humba's kind of magical pool and jumping in there. And I wonder if that was like the genesis of that idea.
It could have been. Yeah. Well, it kind of changed too, because we went from a bath to what Bob is essentially, which is a shower. So,
yeah. And of course, as we know, it's not actually a shower; it's a refrigerator.
Yeah, exactly. TARDIS.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then of course, Tofu just went off on more conspiracy theories there, showing that the spirit of Stop and Swop can never be felled.
Exactly.
It will just keep going down further tangents and weird theories. But yeah, I think that was a typo. I think Steve and I are both in agreement that
100%.
It was a typo, that DK is not just perpetually stuck in Bottles molehills from that point on. But yeah, it does bring to mind something else, Steve. And do you remember the theory that originally Donkey Kong was going to be talking to Banjo and Kazooie in Banjo's house in Banjo-Kazooie instead of Bottles and his mystery pictures?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, just because, of course, there was that portrait of Donkey Kong originally in the house in Banjo-Kazooie, and then Kazooie does have that line where she refers to Bottles as Barrel Boy. And it's just like, wait, is this anything? Is this anything?
Yep.
That's an unresolved thread of Stop and Swap, actually, because there's nothing in this document that suggests that. Of course, that was changed before Banjo-Kazooie was even out, the beginning of all of this. So who's to say? But I think that might have been just barking up nothing. No tree there. It's just a cleared forest, nothing actually.
Look, for any Golden Donkey Kong bus that we do confirm, there's 5 different Bottles bonus Barrel Boy photos that we have to discard.
I mean, it is one of those early screenshots. Donkey Kong was in a portrait of Donkey Kong was in Banjo's house. So who knows? Gigastrike asks, is that a slur used for people who wear glasses? I don't know. I'm not British. I mean, that's all of Bottles' children. Like,
yeah, Specky
and his brother. Yeah. His ancestor Bozai. That's just referring to having a lazy eye. But you know, it's I don't know if Barrel Boy is a. I don't think it is. I think it's more referring to Bottles' shape. His musculature.
Well, it could be the bottles too, like Coke bottle.
But
for the glasses.
But Barrel Boy, I don't know.
Oh, Barrel Boy is totally Donkey Kong, 100% Donkey Kong.
TJ says she could be saying he's barrel chested. Yeah, his ripped,
Not bottles.
his ripped pecs. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Anyway, let's.
If Kazooie is saying that Bottles is barrel chested, she's the one that needs classes.
I'm not trying to turn this into Bottles thirst porn, so let's play our 5th call.
That's the next episode.
Hi, Hyle. It's Freezer. Why don't you stop this episode and swap to one about the Idaho crew in Australia? Also talk about how Perfect Dark is DKU because of the rare cow being in it. Please.
Well, thank you for the call, shower. I mean, refrigerator. I mean, freezer. Freezer's trying to get me to do an episode about Adam and Andrew of the Idaho crew going to her wedding last year. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that as a conversation episode, Freezer. But besides that, she just wanted an excuse to call in about the rare cow, and she knew you would be here, Steve. And
well, of course.
Yeah, because the topic that Steve is an expert on besides Stop and Swap is the rare cow.
That's a sad fact, yes.
It's not a sad fact. We all have our areas of
It's not finding a date. It's not securing real estate. It's the rare cow.
Steve, we'll never be homeowners. It's fine. We live in a palace of our understanding of this shared universe of googly-eyed animals circa 1994 to 2026. Now,
yeah, that's a very kind and friendly way to say the padded cell of a shit-stained mental asylum.
No. Reagan shuttered all of those in the 80s here.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Still very much alive in Canada.
So, quickly explain what the rare cow is so we can move on. Again, every episode of the conversation is somebody's first.
Okay, so in nearly every single Game Boy game, any of the portable games that Rare made, there is a hidden cow that one of the artists, Carrie Gunn, has hidden for players to find. It started with Conker's Pocket Tales. She made an attempt at a cow, and everybody thought it was really funny looking, and they talked about it ad nauseum. So she said, you know what? This funny looking cow, I'm going to put it in every single game that I worked on. And she did, for the most part. I think the only ones missing are like Banjo Pilot and a couple of the DKC Game Boy Advance games. But aside from that, there is a hidden cow. Where Hyle fits into this whole thing is if this cow appearance makes the games that it's appeared in legitimate as entries under the DK Vine Donkey Kong Universe umbrella. So I'll let Hyle answer that one.
Yeah, well, the problem is, right, there's no singular cow. There's no singular rare cow. And then that gets into debates about whether specific fictional species count towards making something DKU, because then we get into, well, what is a Kong? Well, what about Chain Kong? That's clearly Rare's Donkey Kong design in this other character in Super Mario RPG. Why don't you talk about Super Mario RPG, Hyle, you fraud? And then you get into all these other issues, and it becomes very convoluted. Generally, as a rule of thumb, we say various species don't necessarily make something DKU, although, like, if a Kremling showed up in something where no other pre-existing DKU character did, I'm sure we would reopen this for litigation. And then Freezer, maybe we would start talking about Perfect Dark for the Game Boy Color here at DK Vibe. But the fact is, a lot of rare cow appearances also weren't literal cows. They were mere depictions of cows, etchings, graffiti, what have you. So that is a mere reference, and that wouldn't count anyway. So basically what you're trying to say is the one Mickey racing game should
Speedway
be
USA. Get your facts straight.
It wasn't Speedway USA. It was the first one for the Game Boy Color, wasn't it?
It was
Mickey's
a
Racing
physical
Adventure.
appearance. Mickey's Racing Adventure.
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
big one, the hidden cow shrine, there was a secret track in the sky that has this whole lore potential for DK Vine, hint, hint. That's the one that was in Mickey Speedway USA.
Okay. All right. Well,
and those cows move. They animate. They are real.
Okay. Well, you know, we're friends with Disney. Jack Sparrow was in Sea of Thieves. So, who knows? But probably not. Thank you for the call, Freezer. All right, let's play.
On that note,
let's play our final call. The last egg. We need to hit the switch to activate.
Cyan call.
Yeah. So, yeah. Let's play it.
Hey, this is SnakeFighter64, just calling in, just to give my 2 cents on Stop and Swap. I think it's what we know. I'm glad we finally know this. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised it was just one of the developers actually just sharing this information. I kind of figured if we ever found out it would involve, you getting arrested for burglary, Hyle. So, the fact that we got that and you are not in jail is, it's great, and I'm glad we know. It is kind of what we expected, just like, it's more than what we expected, but also kind of not, because it's like, oh, it's cool, but it's also not that much. I mean, DK and multiplayer and Banjo-Tooie isn't that big a deal if you really think about it. I mean, I've never even touched Tooie's multiplayer. But yeah, I think it's neat, and I really hope, this is my big hope, especially with that Banjo-Kazooie PC decompilation that just got released, which makes modding like way easier for the game. I really, really hope that the talented fans can eventually, through the miracle of modding and decompilation, give us some way to experience this, at least as far as how Kazooie to DK64 to Tooie would interact, since that is the most fleshed out aspect of it. Cause I think it is entirely possible. The only real problem is it's so much harder to mod and decompile 64 and Tooie. But I mean, it's been hard to do that for ages, and people are still working on it. And I have no doubt that it could eventually happen. So I just hope that someday we can get to at least experience a hypothetical version of this vision. And I hope you have a good day. And talk to you later on The Kongversation. I've been talking to my girlfriend a lot, and so my urge is to just end every call with a kiss. I'm fighting the urge to do that. Goodbye.
Thank you for the call, SnakeFighter64. First of all,
Love you too.
Yeah, I would like to say that, Steve, it's almost been 10 years since we went to Rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's horrifying. But yeah, Steve and I were part of this trip to Rare in 2016. We went to Manor Park. And look, what I'll say is, if I stole anything when I was there, if I did some snooping, some burglary, and I was in possession of some forbidden knowledge that I wasn't supposed to obtain, I have been a good boy, and I have not actually divulged any of that.
And that all changes on this episode of The Kongversation.
No. What I'll say is, I do know stuff that I'm not supposed to know. And let's just leave it at that. Like, I have an expanded knowledge base of some topics, and I'm not going to divulge what that is, but let's just say that if I ever went scorched earth, I could make a lot of interesting videos about some of these classic games, and I'm not going to do that though. I'm not going to. I'm a good boy. I'm a good boy, Steve. I'm a good boy.
You're the fan who knew too much.
Oh, excuse me. I've got to go to the bathroom, as I then run down and break into one of the barns. And what's this? Have you been keeping up with all these decomped Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie versions?
Yeah, so I know that Banjo is completely done, and there's been a lot of restorative efforts there, and that's going well. But what I harken back to is with Scowo, the guy that initially did the Stop and Swap in real time on real hardware with Ocarina of Time. We've had somebody do the first Stop and Swap ever legitimately. So if players come together and they want to be able to do that, they absolutely can. Like, this is only a matter of time and a matter of boredom. If these people want to come together and create stuff like this and be geniusly creative and stuff, this stuff used to be impossible growing up in the 90s. Like, it would have been unthinkable playground rumor for somebody to say this. Now that people know these games inside out, they know the hardware, and they're very inventive and very adept and very skilled, more so than I could ever hope to be at some of the age that these guys are doing these things. It's just crazy. So to actually step in and want to create something like this, I have all the faith that you get the right people together with the amount of time they have, the free time, and the willingness and the desire to do something, it's going to be done. You'll see it within a year, maybe 2 years.
And you see, I'm such a busted old fan. I'm such an aged gamer that for me, this is almost beyond my brain. And I'm like, I'm more excited about Banjo-Kazooie coming to the Evercade, coming to the Super Pocket. I'm like, ooh. It's going to be Banjo-Kazooie on a new cartridge. Fun. Oh, yay. I mean, that's where I'm at, Steve. So, like, I think it's great. You're not going to get much insight about it from me.
So that's to the next generation, because we were talking about entry points with all these different fans. We right now know that Stop and Swap is dead. We've known that for a while. Before when it was a mystery, now we know it's dead. Yeah. Now we know what the plan was. Now it's up to the players to recreate it. Right. That's the next task for the future generation. You know what the mystery is, now solve it.
You've got to include Donkey Kong 64 in it though too.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they'll put Mario in it as well, and all the different games that they like on the N64. It'll just be a hodgepodge, because that's what they like to do, and Godspeed.
Courtney says, I'm so busted I belong on the pillar in Creepy Castle. Well, then I would just not exist at all. Traveler of the Stars says, I'm so busted I belong in Courtney's filthy stream chat. By the way, I would just like to read a comment that Courtney posted on Blue Sky that I quote posted the other day. Courtney said, and I'm not going to provide any context for this, but it's related to Donkey Kong 64, so it's on topic. It says, honestly, Trough is such a disappointment to the Nipple Nation. He should have had like a dozen pairs of breasts, like a real pig. That way, all of DK64's extreme devotees could suckle at once. Just like to read.
So they've got to put on some kind of list, right?
I mean, we're all on a list.
Some
Steve.
government watch list.
I think we're on Rare's list at this point, because I haven't gotten an invite back for 10 years now.
Nope.
So
one and done, Hyle. One and done. Poor Emma. She invited us all down. They take her aside. They're like, look, never again. That guy was just talking about Stop and Swap. That guy wouldn't shut up about DK.
Yeah.
These losers out of here.
Jem says, I used to work at Xbox and I haven't even been. Yeah, we're all banned now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you got roped into this, Jem.
We ruined it for the rest of us.
Yeah. I'm the one stealing DK64 documents under my shirt. So anyway, let's wrap this up right now. Thank you to everybody who called. Steve, I would say you are one of the world's foremost scholars on this topic of Stop and Swap. I am one of the most learned fans when it comes to the concept of Rare Shared Universe, and together we can do these episodes. And this one really, this one really united both concepts. And seeing how close we were to some of this becoming a reality. I mean, we were like a month away, a month and a half away. Nintendo had to ruin everything, but we were
as they do.
I like Nintendo now, though. Nintendo's doing right by me. Donkey Kong Bonanza, the Virtual Boy for NSO. I like Nintendo. We're friends again. But this would have been fuel back when I was becoming that edgy, angsty teen who was a Rare fan but hated Nintendo somehow. This would have just been more fuel to the fire. But seeing how close we were to some of this. It is a little bit heartbreaking, right? Like, it's a little bit like looking back at the Donkey Kong Racing trailer and continually sobbing. Knowing what was planned that didn't come to fruition, because the level of interconnectivity between Rare's characters would have gone far beyond anything we had seen up until that point, and almost anything we've seen since then. I mean, we've gotten, like I said, the Banjo-Kazooie reveal for Smash, which really did celebrate the whole notion of the DKU. And we've had, Rare characters crossing over here or there in minor ways in the years since. Again, hello to iDarb. Love that game. But this would have really cemented it for a lot of folks who might have been oblivious to Diddy Kong Racing. And, oh my God, Steve, this would have been kind of like the crystallizing moment for my fandom, which at that point was 5 years old, going back to the original Donkey Kong Country. But what a payoff this would have been, having Donkey Kong 64 bring in the ice key from Banjo-Kazooie, having Donkey Kong keep it cold for the Baron Bird, and then, of course, having Banjo-Tooie take it back from him, as well as taking his golden Kong bust to then allow he and his friends to play around in multiplayer. I think compared to Banjo-Tooie's real-world solution, the one that we got on the X64 or the XBLA rethink of Stop and Swap around the time of Nuts and Bolts, I think this original vision, for me, actually does retain the grandeur of all of my wildest notions that I had in mid-1998. Yeah, there's no lava world rising up in Grunty's lair. There's no fungus forest, like none of that, but we were never going to get that for real, because I mean, we would have found that in Banjo-Kazooie by this point anyway, and you know, it's, I think, exceeding where my expectations were lowered in the year 2000.
And to add on to that, I think too, the document, it does explain a lot of things, but there is still mystery in there. There's a lot of undetermined things that even at the time, they didn't know what they were going to do. And that's still open-ended. If you want to fantasize, if you want to hypothesize, that's still all there. They didn't come out with a sheet that said, you know, we're going to have this reward be tied to the red egg, and that's what that'll do. You know, there's no definitive answer here in terms of the eggs.
Yeah.
So that is still, you know, completely up in the air there.
And of course, people can point to the XBLA versions and Nuts and Bolts and say, well, this is what they would have done with them. It's like, no, it's not. You would have unlocked an Xbox gamer pick on the N64. Come on. So
they were very forward thinking.
Like I agree. There's still plenty of mystery here. I mean, just this topic alone, I know I say we're done at the end of every episode we do on this. Like, we're done now. We can't do any more. But just this topic is so romantic. It's so alluring to me. Our favorite video game characters trading arcane artifacts back and forth across the game cartridges themselves. Without the use of cables, without the use of memory cards, no lock on cartridges, no clouds in existence, this would have been sublime, and it would have really made the world of Rare feel like it's existing just beyond our reach. And that's why it's so special to me, because it was almost like this world we obsess over made manifest, made a reality encroaching onto our own. And it would have made the relationship between the Kongs and Banjo-Kazooie also a tangible reality for so many people, going beyond Diddy Kong Racing, going beyond Smash Brothers. And I think that's the most melancholy, bittersweet reality of all of this, is we were so close. We were so close to having everything I've ever wanted, and it was taken from us from one hasty fax sent off on October 1st, 1999.
It's no wonder Paul censored the name.
No, I'm not gonna do anything untoward. I'm a good boy, as I said. I'm a good boy. But Steve, I have to say, for all of that, I do think this is the end for us. I think this is the last Stop and Swap episode we can do. Although, come to think of it, you know, Banjo-Kazooie is coming out on the Evercade this June, and you know, if they release one, they're probably going to release another at some point if all goes well. And if that's the case, we know they're changing things. I mean, it's playable with a D-pad. There's going to be alterations made to the game itself. So what would be preventing them from...
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.